Good time zone and warm greetings to wherever you are in the world. This is Amelia, aka Space.Puffin, here to continue the Volume 2 era. On a mission to make it as quick and painless as possible, knowing what's ahead of us before we finally set sail out onto uncharted waters. First up, a quick content warning. This video will be rated R for handholding, so if you happen to be following the cultivation path of abstinence, I recommend that you tread with caution. Because remembering this scene in the Donghua, remembering those stairs, that very, very loud heartbeat, this is the scene where Xie Lian begins to realize that he's a little bit in danger. So hey, unrelated but not really, what exactly happens if Xie Lian like recalling from the Donghua, his whole cultivation thing is about excessiveness, right? Avoiding excessiveness. Like doing too much of a thing, feeling too much anger, drinking too much. The cultivation path of not doing too much. But like, what happens? Like, does his spiritual energy or whatever get like thrown off balance, or does it just stop working? And follow-up question, does he need to excessively, or is it more of a one-time thing? One strike, you're out. No, this is actually kind of important. Because as weird as I find it to have your powers somehow connected to your chastity, restraint, I think is maybe a better word. That is actually a potential risk in the future that we have to consider. Potentially even a problem that needs solving. Because if this is a thing about Xie Lian, you know, feeling stronger and stronger feelings, which we know that he's already doing, he's already developing these stronger feelings. Like, will it get to a point where he has a situation where he needs to kind of choose to be able to cultivate or to be able to be with Huachang the way that he wants to be? And then there's this other question of if Xie Lian's powers are, you know, weakened or poofed, like what can he do? Will he have to find an alternative power source? Does he have to start over? Like cultivate differently? Like this is something we actually have to figure out, because this could have implications and repercussions regarding the story going forward. And it could be a very interesting story element. But also, like, as I understand it, Xie Lian's whole cultivation power thing is already locked away because of his cursed shackle. So perceivably, he does have powers now that are not under his cultivation powers. Like, what are the things we're seeing him do now? Mainly just his martial art prowess. But I'm gonna be honest, guys, I'm getting ahead of myself. This is a conversation I remember happening in episode 3 of season 2, so we're still a little bit behind that. We need to get there first, and then we can probably have this discussion a little bit more informed, at least fresh on our minds. So let's do our pre-discussion so that we can get there. The beginning of Volume 2 is very faithfully again adapted in the Donghua. But that said, we do get a couple of new details that we can actually add to our board. The first one really being a detail, is that we learn that the martial god of the West, Xuan has a title like all the other gods and generals and princes, which happens to be Qi Ying. We still don't know what his title is, like is he a lord, is he general, is he his highness, we don't know that yet. But Xuan Yizhen is also Qi Ying. Another note I'd like to put up on the board is a new character note for Lan Chang, a ghost city denizen, the prostitute ghost. The thing about Lan Chang is that I remember her name was not actually mentioned in the dub, but did get mentioned in the subtitles of the Mandarin version. And it was hinted to me that I should be noting her down in my head somewhere, so I've been thinking about her. And now I have her name on a note. So I'm suspecting that she will pop up in some plot later. I know that she's not going to be important for the rest of this season, unless that is something that was actually changed. But we know to keep an eye out for her. So I'm just gonna put her here-ish, somewhere in like Ghost City area, for now. Another mechanism that we get to learn more about is one that concerns Ling Wen, we learn that Ling Wen, along with Windmaster, is one of the gods that happen to have the ability to change gender, or rather has a male form a little bit against her will. I mentioned this in my Discord book club as well, but I actually really like the idea of how mortals and their beliefs widely influences a heaven official's reach and even the conditions under which their powers operate. Because why the heavenly officials, especially the martial gods and to some extent the elemental masters, are, greatly powerful. And they do calm down and deal with these dangerous situations to help out, to protect the mortals. But in the end, the mortals, more specifically the believers, are the ones who are holding the lifelines of the heavenly officials. And their actions and beliefs are the source of their power. And not only do I think this is a fun mechanism to implement, because it kind of gives us a little bit of world building in that there's an urgency for heavenly officials to keep their believers satisfied, right? Keep them believing in them. But it also helps us put restraints and limits on our band of people when they're going out into the world. Like we've already seen how being far away from their respective areas where they have their believers have affected the junior officials of Nanyang and Shenzhen. While someone very powerful like JUN WU, who has temples all over the place, would be less affected by this. But okay, I really can't delay this anymore, we need to talk about JUN WU. Because we have at this point in time spent 2 seasons with these characters. JUN WU has been a part of one of those seasons, but has been mentioned since the prologue of TGCF. And what we get to know about him is that he is the boss. He is the Heavenly Emperor, the most powerful of the martial gods, and just the top dog of the heavenly officials. Like, they look to him for wisdom, strength, and judgment, and most of his words and decisions, they seem to be respected and obeyed. We also learn more about his relationship to Xie Lian and learn that it is different from his relationship to the other gods. In fact, as I've been playfully saying since season 2, he is playing favorites. JUN WU, when we meet him in season 2 episode 1, gives the vibe of taking on kind of the mentor archetype. Like, he really wants to mentor Xie Lian, to help him and to support him. And admittedly, seeing him take Xie Lian's side against, the other shitbags who are the heavenly officials does feel very good then and there. But while Xie Lian is usually quick to defend him, as we did here in season 1 when he talks to Hua Chang about JUN WU, it is rather ambiguous whether or not Xie Lian actually wants to be his mentee. In fact, I get the vibe that he actually doesn't. But in the book so far, we actually learned something new about JUN WU, which I think is kind of important. It's in this passage here starting on page 31, where Xie Lian and JUN WU have reached the rooms behind the Great Hall, and Xie Lian is studying the mural that they have to go behind. And he's describing the back of the mural with its painting and all these tiny pearls embedded on this giant map glinting like stars. Each one of those pearls embedded on the map represented the location of a temple of divine might built in the mortal realm. 800 years earlier, when JUN WU brought the newly ascended Xie Lian to these inner halls, the twinkling stars on the mural weren't as dense, but now the shimmering jewels seem to fill one's vision, overwhelming in their radiance. And this is a super important passage because it compares JUN WU from 800 years ago to JUN WU today. And the whole point of it is, he has a fuck ton of more temples than he used to have, which means that he's growing more and more powerful. And this piece of information has got me thinking more about JUN WU and what his character actually is supposed to be in the story. Because usually when we have this very powerful character who's getting more and more powerful as time goes on, like we know he was already quite powerful 800 years ago, and who also kind of wants to be a mentor to the main character. Usually in fiction, we have a few things that could happen to characters like this. The first option is that he's gonna die. Like in some sort of very important battle, like he'll die or he'll sacrifice himself, something. Which could be really interesting if it is not at the climax of the story. because that would spread chaos in heaven. Like, someone would have to step up, and as we know right now, heaven is not in a position where they have someone like that. Like, you would think it would be Xie Lian, but he is, you know, shackled and disliked by everyone. And the second most powerful martial god at the moment is having a lot of issues as well. So if something like that happens, JUN WU dies mid-story against the big evil, that could set up some really interesting shifts and things. The second thing that could happen to this character is that they are very morally grey. This is kind of the option that I'm more sure of regarding JUN WU, because we already kind of see that heaven has problems, you know? So what I mean is that JUN WU could end up, you know, justifying his own actions based on something that seems logical to him. But in the end, whatever he ends up doing will throw off the whole balance between the three realms and whatever. Like, basically, I'm expecting him to do something and have reasonings that Xie Lian just can't support, especially considering how he's getting all chummy with all these ghosts, you know? And then the last thing that could happen with this kind of character is that they turn out to be the actual big evil of the story. The actual antagonist. Like all the other antagonists, they're just small fry actually compared to the big bad. So like everything else we're setting up, all these other things that we have to get through, all the other ghost kings are really just not as hard to fight or get over as the obstacle that will be JUN WU. And finally, let's not forget that Huachang, when asked of his opinion on the Crown Prince of Shanle, antagonizes the Emperor, which I think is actually an important narrative clue planted in us, again because Huachang is one of our main characters. And well, JUN WU does antagonize him right back, like once Xie Lian admits to being acquainted with him. So I've already talked a little bit about this in book club as well, but I felt that it was important to get those thoughts out there so that you know that I am really paying attention to JUN WU, and I don't think that he's gonna be just supportive. There's some stuff about how he's acting, the way he talks to Xie Lian, and also just the fact that he is amassing all this power and has been amassing power over all these years. That's really like starting to ring some warning bells in my head. I don't think I would have thought this much about this if I hadn't learned that he was actually getting a lot stronger over these last hundreds of years. Again, because as we know now, there's a lot of shit going on in heaven, and you know, like the second most powerful martial god is getting slammed. I would bet that this is gonna have consequences for, you know, his followers and his believers and how his palace is gonna handle his part of all this. And I don't know how to say this, it's just simply really suspicious that the number one god is getting stronger and stronger, while number two is stagnating or getting weaker, you know? So these are the current thoughts I have about JUN WU. I think he's gonna be important to us as a supportive character for Xie Lian, but I think that he is also going to start showing opinions, things, plans, ideas that are not going to go well along with, you know, what we're doing here, which is basically marrying a god and a ghost. I'm gonna be honest and say I don't think Sky Daddy is into that. Okay, but let's not dwell on that anymore. We should prepare ourselves to step into the gambler's den and meet San Lang in his true form. But before that, I have a question to answer. So again, for anyone who doesn't know, we play this little gambling game in the gambler's den over at my server for anyone who is a KoFi supporter, where we make bets on how long I am going to spend recording a video. And this time, our first place winner, the person who got closest, was Ninchen. And Ninchen has left me this big lovely black box that I'm going to try and read for you right now, and then hopefully answer. And I'm a bit nervous because it's very long, so let's see what happens. You know the drill, Puffin. That I do. You have ascended to the heaven as the God of Corkboards. Yes, I have. Yes, I have. In case some of you don't know by now, yes, I am the god of corkboardism. The Emperor has recently started a buddy program, like a friendship program to you know, promote good relationships between employees. Okay, to help new deities settle and get to know their new colleagues, while simultaneously broaden the established officials' experiences. Okay. JUN WU offers you the following options. Okay, I get options, I get to pick. A. Shopping for godly clothes for yourself with function. Going robe shopping with function, okay. B. Understanding heavenly finances with Windmaster. Okay, that sounds useful. C. Alcohol-free clubbing with mooching. Are you fucking for real? Oh my lord. D. A poetry writing session with Long Chen Cho instructed by JUN WU himself. Or E. Martial arts training with Ling Wen instructed by Pei Ming. Okay, please rank these questionable experiences from 5 to 1, with 5 being the worst and 1 being the activity you would go for. Okay, holy shit. What the actual... Well, Ninchin likes to write, and we can see some of that in this. Oh my lord, this is very creative. Okay, so there's a few things going on with this list already. Just on the basis of me being who I am a civil god of Corkboardism, and very much a female. So I'm already just envisioning that A is gonna be so hard to do. Shopping for clothes with function. Like, if function was forced to go with me to shop for clothes, like, I wouldn't be able to get him into any stores. He would stand outside. I'm a girl. Yeah, I'm envisioning that would be not like a terrible experience though. It's more like I just wouldn't really get anything out of it. Like, he would show me where the stalls are, and then we would... It wouldn't be a very enriching experience, is what I'm trying to say. I suppose it would be nice to just walk around with him, you know? So maybe that would go somewhere in the middle. Like, as long as he's not screaming and running away. Like, I think there would be like general talk while we were walking around at least. So I feel like it could be a nice experience, but the actual activity would be just so fruitless. I would just end up doing everything I needed to do myself, and he would just be showing me around. So somewhere in the middle, I think. Let's put it at 3 for now. Understanding heavenly finances with Windmaster. Honestly, I think this would be a winner. Because I know, although I am dirt poor, as a civil god of fucking corkboardism, compared to D Windmaster Shouqing Xuan. Like, I know I don't operate at their level, but I do know that I'd learn a lot, and at some point, a jar of liquor would be pulled out, and I think we would have a great time. And like everyone says, the Windmaster is great with people. I also think there's no contest, it would just be hands down the best fucking experience. And I think I'd learn a lot more than just finances. I would love for a chance to be friends with Windmaster. In fact, we're already colleagues, we've been working at the same legal team for all of season 2. So it might be a little bit of a boring answer, but I think I'll put that on the top for now. Alcohol-free clubbing with mooching. I can't tell if I'd love it or hate it. What kind of clubbing are we even talking about? Like, we're in heaven, like, are we talking about like clubbing, or are we talking about like socialite tea clubs or whatever? Like, I think if I could get to the point where I could get mooching to talk to me, even if it's 50% insults and 50% eye rolls, I could learn something. It could be an interesting experience. I feel like he knows a lot about everyone. Like, you would think that Windmaster is the gossip monger, but actually we know who's been hanging around in the telepathic communication array thing constantly, all the time. And I can have a good time, no alcohol required. I like to have duality like that. I don't know, I feel like this could be nice. I feel like this could be fine. Because I already know, looking at the last 2 options, a poetry writing session with Long Chen Cho instructed by JUN WU. Holy shit. First off, Long Chen Cho would probably fall asleep. He does that in all his fucking classes. And I also have no real interest in poetry. I would just be listening. Let's put it that way. I'd just be listening. You know, it would be nice for a little bit. But I think I would be bored, like, genuinely. I think I would get bored. And then feel a little bit like I had to perform because I'm with the fucking emperor. This one's a pass for me, but my question is, would it be worse than having a martial arts training session with Ling Wen instructed by Pei Ming? Ling Wen and I are both civil gods. I feel like we're not made for this shit. And also, this is more time than I would ever want to spend in the vicinity of Pei Ming. Though them being friends would actually be very interesting to see. I'd like to see their dynamic. So from the perspective of someone who's interested in seeing what their friendship is like, I think I would actually rank that a little higher. Yeah, I think it's gonna be like this. So for me personally, as the civil god of corkboardism, I would be least interested in having a poetry writing session with Long Chen Chol taught by JUN WU. I would be slightly more interested in a martial arts training session with Ling Wen and Pei Ming. I think I'd be fine with going shopping for clothes with Feng Xin, even though it would be very unproductive on the clothes shopping part. Like, hopefully I'll be able to find something to talk about, even if we will be walking around like we're social distancing with like a 3-meter space between us. Too, I'd go clubbing with mooching, no alcohol required. I don't know if I'd have a good time, but I'd have an interesting time. And I would actually love to do finances with Xie Qingxuan, because I'm sure that if anyone can make a topic like heavenly finances a blast, it's the Windmaster and the pot of liquor. And that is how I would spend a day up in heaven under JUN WU's new buddy program. If you feel up for it, play this game with me and let me know in the comments down below what you would most likely want to do. Rank these activities 1 through 5 and let's compare. So thank you so much for your question, Ninchin, and thank you to everyone from the Temple of Corkboards who participate in these gambling sessions. I say gambling sessions, but they're more like betting sessions. You're not actually losing anything. I feel like we're all winning. And if you too would like to participate in these gambling sessions, consider donating to me on Ko-fi and joining my Discord server. Alright, and here we go with mentions. First up for the board today, I welcome the wonderful Ezzy. Thank you so much for donating to me and for becoming a part of the Temple of Corkboards. This time around, I had a handful of people come back to give new donations because of our Volume 2 reading, and the first one up is DK Williams. Thank you so much for coming back with another donation, and I have made you a bigger name tag, so I'll be replacing your old one with this one. I have some hearts to give out this time around, and the first one goes to Tiny Meeps. Thank you for coming back this month with another donation. Here is a pink heart for you. The next pink heart is up for the wonderful Muley. Thank you so much for donating to me this month as well. And the last heart on our list is for the wonderful Emma Slovene. Thank you so much for donating to me again this month. Now, as for flowers, I actually have this wonderful blue one to go up for the lovely Gracie. Chimichomps, thank you so much for donating to me this month and for sending your lovely message. And this cute grey cat guardian with a little bit of a yellow choker goes up for the lovely Sea Banana. Thank you so much for supporting me continuously throughout these last months. I also have a cat's butt. This one is for the lovely Misfortunes. D, thank you so much for supporting me continuously, and it's time to upgrade your guardian to this more powerful cat butt, although I am sure you have more than enough cat butts in your life. Here is another one. And furthermore, you had so many heart pins that you've just been collecting, so I decided to put them all together into a cherry blossom pin for you. So here we go. Thank you so much, Dee. I'm so happy to be spending August this year with you as well. And last but not least, a big shout out to the lovely Misty. Thank you so much for having supported me for months and months now. And because you are one of my biggest supporters, I will be granting you this butterfly pin. That's going up by your name now. And additionally, for being one of my biggest supporters, I'll be putting up this white flower by your name to remember that by. So thank you so much, Misty. I hope you are enjoying these read-along videos because you have given me so much joy, and I hope that you're taking some from me as well. And that is the board for this time. Thank you guys so much for continuing to aid me in filling it out. And now, let's put all that aside and get ready to continue our Volume 2 journey. Thank you for your patience. Had a little bit of a corkboard incident here. I think my powers are severely affected by the heat. But we're all good, we're all fixed now. And we are ready to venture into the next chapter of Volume 2 of Heaven Official's Blessing. So get comfy or get to whatever you need doing, or get out your books and let's start. Chapter 14. Admiring the flower through red clouds, a heart full of affection. Though Hua Chang's words were filled with contempt, the moment he spoke, the man in question allowed the taunting from all around and dared not argue back. The attendant who had led Xie Lian to the long table said, Gong Tzu. I haven't looked that up yet. I know it means like like Lord Master or something, but I don't remember the pronunciation, sorry. Gong Tzu, you are very lucky today. Xie Lian never moved his gaze from the table. How so? Our Cheng Tzu, meaning a title for the master ruler of an independent city-state, rarely comes by, the attendant replied. It is only these past few days that he has been in the mood, so is this not good luck? Judging by her tone, Xie Lian could tell that the attendant held this Cheng Tzu in high regard, as if the mere sight of him was the greatest of fortune. Xie Lian couldn't help but smile. The screen curtain was made of soft silk, captivating in its red silhouette, a truly enchanting sight. In front of the red curtain, there were a few charming women overlooking the gambling table. Xie Lian was content to just watch from the background at first, but the moment he heard Hua Chang's voice, he started trying to push through the crowd, though without drawing any attention to the fact that he was there. Finally, he squeezed through to the table and saw the man in the middle of putting down his bets. The betting man was a living human. Xie Lian wasn't surprised, as it was known that there were more than just ghosts in Ghost City. There were also a number of cultivators of considerable skill, and once in a while mortals at the brink of death, or those who wished to die, would stumble in by accident. The gambling man also had a mask on, but both his eyes were visible, bulging and laced with red as if they were bleeding. His lips were pale, like he hadn't seen the sun in days. Although he was a living human, he resembled a ghost more than any of the ghosts present. Both of his hands were pressing down tightly on a black wooden dice cup on the table, and after holding back for a moment, he shouted, with the air of a man who'd stopped caring about anything else, "But how come the other guy was allowed to bet both his legs?" One of the croupiers before the red curtain smiled. The one before used to be an acclaimed bandit, known wherever he went for his light footwork and ability to take flight. That ability was the essence of his life, so his legs were deemed a worthy bet. You are neither a skilled artisan nor a renowned medic. What worth does your one arm possess? The man gritted his teeth. Then I bet 10 years of my daughter's life. Xie Lian was stunned by those words and thought, where on earth is there a father who is willing to bet with the life of his child? Is that even possible? Behind the curtain, Hua Chang only snorted. Very well. Xie Lian couldn't tell if it was his imagination, but he could sense coldness in that response. But then he added mentally, Sandong said he always has good luck, and all his fortune sticks came up as the best of luck. If he bets against this man, won't he win for sure and take 10 years of life from that man's daughter? He was just thinking this when the croupier announced sweetly by the long table, even is a loss, odd is a win. Once the cup is tipped, there is no turning back. Now, please. As it turned out, Hua Chang wouldn't be involved in the betting after all. That man shook the gambling cup haphazardly, both hands grasping hard, and the whole quieted down. The sounds of the dice rattling could be heard, loud and crisp. A long while after, his movement came to a sudden stop. Then everything was still. It was quite some time before the man slowly, very slowly, lifted a corner of the gambling cup and peeked through the gap. Those bloodshot eyes suddenly widened. He flipped open the cup and shouted with mad joy, Odd! 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 I win! I've won! I've won! I've won! This was certainly not the outcome the crowd of humans and ghosts around the long table had wanted to see. and they started booing the man down, slapping the table and shouting their discontent. One of the croupiers smiled and said, "Congratulations, your business will soon see a turn for the better." The man laughed uproariously and cried, "Wait, I want to bet again." The croupier smiled. "You are welcome to. What do you want this time?" The man pulled a long face and he said, I want everyone competing with me in my trade to drop dead." Hearing this, the crowd started muttering and clicking their tongues. The croupier raised a hand to cover her smile. "If that is what you desire, it is much more difficult to fulfill than your previous wish. Will you not consider something else? Asking for your business to flourish further, for example?" Yet the man replied, his eyes red, "No, that is the only thing I want to bet on. That's what I'm betting for." "Then if that is your wish, 10 years of your daughter's life may not be enough," the croupier said. "I'll add more if that's not enough. I'll bet 20 years of her life and the fate of her marriage too." The ghostly crowd was in an uproar and they burst out laughing. "This dad's lost his mind. He's selling his daughter. Wow, just wow," the croupier announced once again. "Even is a loss, odd is a win. Once the cup is tipped, there is no turning back. Now please." The man once again took up the gambling cup, trembling as he shook it. If he lost, his daughter would lose 20 years of her life and a perfectly good marriage, which was obviously not ideal. But if he won, all his competitors would drop dead? Although Xie Lian didn't think Hua Chang would ever let such a thing happen, after much hesitation he stepped a little closer. He was just debating whether he should cast some small trick when suddenly someone grabbed hold of him. He turned his head to see and found Shi Qingxuan. Shi Qingxuan had returned to his male form and he whispered, "Don't be rash." Xie Lian whispered back, "Lord Windmaster, why did you transform back?" "It's a long story," Shi Qingxuan sighed. "That group of girlies and aunties dragged me around saying they were going to introduce me to good beauty parlors. I finally escaped, but they caught me again, so I had to change back. They dragged me to a place that smeared so much stuff on my face, pulling, stretching, slapping, smacking. Quick, check my face. How is it? Anything wrong? Do you see anything off?" He pushed his face right up to Xie Lian for inspection, and Xie Lian dutifully scrutinized it before replying truthfully. "I think it looks even smoother and fairer than before." Shi Qingxuan brightened immediately. "Really? Oh good, that's wonderful." "Is there a mirror? Where's the mirror? I want to see." "I'll look later," Xie Lian said. "Ghost City is blocking our spiritual communication, so let's not lose each other again. By the way, how did you know I was here, Lord Windmaster?" "I didn't," Shi Qingxuan replied. "I came because Chencho and I had already agreed to meet here. When we lost each other earlier, I just came here instead, but when I walked in, it turned out you were here too." "You called Chencho out?" Xie Lian asked. "To meet here?" "Yeah," Shi Qingxuan replied. "Chencho is Lang Chencho, His Highness Taihua. You know that much at least, right? He's the martial god of the East." "Oh yes, he knows. He does know. In fact, knows more than anyone on this board, I bet. Since we're here, it'll be best if he comes too. The Gambler's Den is one of the most bustling, chaotic places in Ghost City. It's a landmark. People and ghosts alike go in and out in large numbers, so it's much less conspicuous for us to mingle. That's why I told him to meet us here." Xie Lian nodded. When he turned back to the long table, that man still hadn't lifted the cup. His eyes were rolled back and he was muttering, not unlike many of the ghosts there. Xie Lian sighed. "This man," Shi Qingxuan, still feeling his face, said, "I know what you want to say and I agree, but Ghost City is Hua Chang's territory and the rules here at the Den are all followed willingly. You gamble at your own risk, the heavens can do nothing. Let's just observe for now, and we can come up with something if this gets out of hand." Xie Lian hummed, thinking that there was no way Sun Lung would allow this to get out of hand. It would truly be best just to observe. With that thought, he settled down. As for the gambling man, he finally seemed to gather enough courage and lifted the cup just a sliver. The outcome was about to be revealed. Just then, another person burst in and slammed the cup back down with a strike that crushed it to pieces. The strike not only crushed the gambling cup, but also the hand that was on top of it. The entire table splintered with a deep crack. The masked man cradled his crushed hand and rolled all over the floor screaming. The crowd of ghosts also started shouting, some cheering and some crying out in shock. The person who had smashed their way in yelled, "You! What a vicious heart! A wish for wealth and fortune, fine, but to wish for others sudden death? If you want to bet, have the guts to bet your own life, not the life and marriage of your daughter. You're not fit to be a man, not fit to be a father." The young man had straight, strong brows and stars for eyes bursting with heroic aura. Although he was dressed in simple black attire and nothing extravagant, his air of nobility could not be concealed. It was none other than the Crown Prince of Yongan, Lang Chencho. From their spot in the crowd, Xie Lian and Shi Qingxuan both covered their faces at the same time. Xie Lian groaned, "Lord Windmaster, did you not tell him to be a little more cautious when he's here and keep it low-key?" Shi Qingxuan whined back, I told him, but he's always like that. What can I do? Had I known earlier, I would have planned for us to come here together." Xie Lian sympathized. "I get it, I understand." Just then, Hua Chang chuckled lightly from behind the curtains. Xie Lian's heart skipped a beat. The youth had often laughed when he was with Xie Lian, so now Xie Lian could judge fairly well when the laughter was genuine versus when it was mocking, or when it was laced with killing intent. His voice was languid. "You must have guts of steel to start trouble here in my territory." Lang Chencho turned to face the direction of the voice, with fire in his eyes. "Are you the owner of this gambler's den?" The crowd jeered from all around. "Ignorant child! Do you know who you're talking to? That's our Chengzu." Someone sneered. "Not only does he own this gambler's den, the entire ghost city is his." Lang Chencho barely showed any reaction when hearing this, but Shi Qingxuan was completely taken aback. "Dear Lord, is that who I think it is behind the curtain, Crimson Rainsword Flower?" Xie Lian answered. "Yes, it's him." Shi Qingxuan asked again. "Are you sure?" Xie Lian replied. "I'm certain." Shi Qingxuan panicked. Crap, what do we do about Chencho now?" Xie Lian said, after a few moments. "Let's just hope he doesn't expose his identity." Yet the more Lang Chencho looked around, the angrier he became. "This hellish place reeks of smoke and corruption, and it's filled to the brim with demonic chaos. What scum is gathered here, committing what kind of deeds? Running a place like this, none of you have a single trace of humanity." The crowd booed in unison. "We ain't humans anyway, what do we need humanity for? What a useless concept. Whoever wants it can take it." "Who do you think you are, coming all the way here just to insult us?" Amused, Hua Chang said, "This den of mine is a carnival of hell to begin with. There's a path for you in heaven, but you refused to take it and instead chose to barge into the despairing depths of hell. So, what shall we do with you?" The moment they heard the word heaven, Xie Lian and Shi Qingxuan instantly knew, just as they'd suspected, Hua Chang had already seen through Lang Chencho and knew exactly where he came from. Yet Lang Chencho completely missed the implication of his words and slammed his hand down on the table once more. He was standing at one end, and with that single strike he sent the entire table flying toward the red shadow behind the curtain. Those who had been gathered around the table dodged to the side, but the seated silhouette behind the curtain didn't move. With a wave of his hand, the long table was flung back in the opposite direction, back toward Lang Chencho. At the sight of the rebounding table, Lang Chencho caught it with one hand, but he quickly realized he couldn't handle the overwhelming force bearing down against him and immediately switched to both hands. As he pushed and pushed, blue veins began to pop on his forehead. The once bustling hall now had people and ghosts fleeing and hiding. Xie Lian and Shi Qingxuan debated whether they should step in to help. Since they hadn't been exposed yet, they could continue to help out in secret, but if they jumped in openly, they'd risk having their covers blown completely. On the other hand, Lang Chencho gave a loud shout and finally shoved back the hefty table. Behind the red curtains, Hua Chang's silhouette was still lounging on the chair. He curled all fingers into a fist, then released them lightly. Instantly, the table exploded into fragments of wood, the splinters shooting towards Lang Chencho. The force of this gust flung forth countless splinters, as sharp as knives, more fearful than any hidden weapon. If Lang Chencho were to keep his powers hidden and remain in his mortal form, there was no way he'd be able to evade the attack. Thus, moments later, his body started to emit a faint light. Xie Lian and Xie Qingxuan understood right away and panicked. Oh no, he's going to reveal his true form. But this faint sheen of spiritual light vanished as soon as it appeared. Lang Chencho had probably remembered that he wasn't supposed to reveal his identity on this trip and caught himself at the last second. He quickly withdrew his power, having barely stopped the flying splinters. However, while Lang Chencho had stepped back, Hua Chang, on the other hand, would not. The crimson figure, sitting leisurely behind the red curtain, made another hand seal. This time, he pressed his fingers together and lightly flicked up. With this one motion, Lang Chencho's body was suddenly lifted off the ground, sprawled out like a starfish. His body was suspended on the ceiling of the great hall of the gambler's den. After being caught, Lang Chencho still didn't seem to be able to wrap his head around how he suddenly started floating, and he struggled to break free, his face full of confusion. Xie Lian felt his head throb. Now that his power has been sealed, even if he wants to return to his divine form, it will be impossible. Xie Qingxuan agreed. Since Ghost City is Hua Chang's territory, if he wants to seal his power, he can. Even though Lang Chencho had been apprehended before the crowd, there was at least one upside. Namely, his identity was probably still safe for now. If he had continued the brawl and released his powers, it would be hard to explain why Taihua Zhenjun, the martial god of the East, had come to Ghost City to wreak havoc. After all, unless there was something extraordinary afoot, the heavenly and ghost realms hadn't crossed each other's paths in centuries. Seeing that the gambler's den's unexpected guest had been detained, the crowd that had fled returned and gathered in the hall once more. They pointed at the suspended Lang Chencho and laughed uproariously. Lang Chencho had probably never experienced this kind of humiliation before, and his face flushed red as he wordlessly struggled against the invisible bindings. From time to time, a ghost from below would jump up in an attempt to pat his head. Fortunately, Hua Chang had hung him fairly high up, far out of reach, sparing him that embarrassment. Hua Chang chuckled from behind the red curtain. What an interesting catch today. I'll let you all play with it. Whoever's lucky and wins big can take it home to roast. At those words, endless cheers erupted within the hall. Bet on the roll! Let's bet on the roll! The highest haul can take him home to roast. Oh my, this little gaga looks pretty delicious. That'll teach you to cause trouble around here. The four masked bouncers carried in a new long table, and the crowd flocked to the area once again to start the next round of bets. The masked man, who was clutching his hand and howling on the ground, was long forgotten. The prize this time around was none other than Lang Chencho, suspended in mid-air. Seeing how riled the crowd was, Xie Qingxuan paced back and forth, anxiously flailing his arms. Oh, what do we do? Should we go up there and win him back, or is it better to fight? Xie Lian asked. Lord Windmaster, how's your luck? Xie Qingxuan replied. It's sometimes good, sometimes bad. There's no certainty with something like luck. Xie Lian said. There can be. For example, look at me. I've never had any good luck. Xie Qingxuan gaped. Is it that bad? Xie Lian nodded, ruefully. Whenever I roll, the most I get is snake eyes. Xie Qingxuan knitted his brows, but an idea immediately came to him, and he slapped his thigh. How about this? Since the most you ever get is snake eyes, then you should bet on the lowest number. There can't be anyone who'll roll lower than you. After a moment of consideration, Xie Lian agreed. You have a good point. Let me try. So he found a place near the table and threw out a suggestion. Why not switch the rules up a bit and see who can roll the smallest? The lowest roll wins. How about that? The crowd around the table was rowdy. Some agreed, some disagreed. Xie Lian decided to take 2 dice and give it a try first. Before he rolled, he chanted mentally, "Small, small, small." The dice were tossed, and the 2 leaned in to take a look. 2 6s. ... said Xie Lian, and ... said Shi Qingxuan. Our first numbers for the tally this time around. What can I say? Besties who ellipses together stay together. Xie Lian rubbed his forehead in defeat. It seems that not even a change of rules can change my luck. Shi Qingxuan mirrored him in rubbing his forehead. Maybe it would be better to just fight outright. Just then, a croupier approached the red curtains and leaned in, as if trying to hear what the figure behind was saying. She nodded, raised her head, and announced, "Everyone, may I have your attention, please? Chengzu has an announcement to make." Hearing that Chengzu had something to say, the crowd immediately dropped everything and became exceedingly quiet. The croupier continued, "Chengzu said to change up the rules." Chatter broke in the crowd. Chengzu is the rule. The rules are whatever Chengzu says they are. What are we changing them to? The croupier responded. Chengzu said that he is in a good mood today and wants to play a couple of rounds with everyone. Anyone is free to bet against him. Whoever wins can take home the thing up above. Whether to steam it, boil it, fry it, or pickle it will be completely up to the winner. Learning that they'd be betting against Chengzu, the ghosts began to have second thoughts. It seemed that Huacheng indeed never stepped in to gamble himself. There were a few brave souls attempting to give it a shot, but not a single one of them dared to be the first. Above them, Lang Zhenzhuo continued his struggles with endless determination. He barked, "What do you mean thing? I am not a thing! You dare to use me as a bet?" This proclamation that he wasn't a thing was heard by the many female ghosts in the crowd. Giggling, they stared at him with openly lecherous looks while running the tips of their blood-red tongues across their lips, as if they wanted to swallow him whole. Yeah, sure, that's exactly what they wanted to do. We already know what they want to get up to in this town. Xie Lian thought, this child, it's better if you speak less. After a soundless sigh, Xie Lian stepped forward and said gently, "In that case, please let me have a try." Upon hearing his voice, the shadow behind the red curtains paused. Then the figure slowly rose to his feet. The croupier in front of the curtains smiled. "Then, will this Gongqi please come forth?" Within the hall, the crowds of humans and ghosts all parted for this brave warrior. When Xie Lian reached the end of the path, the croupier presented him with the polished black gambling cup in her hands. "Please go ahead, Gongzu." To all the previous gamblers, she had always used a casual way of speaking. Despite the ordinary words she uttered, her tone wasn't polite in the slightest. However, to Xie Lian now, not only had she started using honorifics, the tone she used was also exceedingly polite and respectful. Yeah, oh my gosh. This is, I feel like these Huacheng's helpers, they know what's up. They know that, this is a VIP, to put it that way. Someone, worthy of the honorifics. Xie Lian received a black gambling cup from her with a word of thanks and lightly cleared his throat. Since he had never touched anything of this sort before, he shook the cup randomly for a good while and pretended that he knew a thing or two. As he moved his hands, he looked up and glanced at Lang Zhenzhuo hanging above. Lang Zhenzhuo stared back at him, wide-eyed and pitiful, but thankfully he didn't make a sound. His expression made Xie Lian want to laugh for some reason, but he held it back. After shaking for a long time, he finally stopped. Countless pairs of eyes were intently focused on the cup in his hands, and Xie Lian felt that somehow this tiny little gambling cup had grown incomparably heavy. He didn't know if there was a right way to flip it. However, just as he was about to reveal the outcome, the croupier stopped him. "Wait, what is it?" Xie Lian asked. The croupier replied, "Chengzu said that your cup-shaking posture isn't quite right." Okay. Xie Lian thought to himself, so there really is a correct way of doing this? Could all my bad luck earlier be due to my bad posture? He asked modestly, then may I ask what the correct posture is? The croupier responded, Chengsu has invited you to come up, and he is willing to teach you Gongzi. Upon hearing this, the crowd of ghosts within the den drew in sharp breaths. Xie Lian heard the ghosts grumble. To think Chengsu is going to teach him, that's a first. Does that mean he's gonna die? Chengsu wants to do what? Just who is this? Why teach him? Shaking a cup is shaking a cup. What kind of correct posture is there? Xie Lian was thinking the same question, but the croupier had already motioned him toward the red curtains. Please. Thus, Xie Lian arrived in front of the red curtains with the black wooden gambling cup clutched in his hands. The silk curtains swayed gently, almost giving life to the red silhouette. The person behind the curtains was standing directly in front of him, with only half an arm's distance between them. Xie Lian held his breath as a hand parted the heavy red curtains and landed perfectly under his own, supporting the gambling cup. This was a right hand, slender and pale, and the well-defined fingers had a red string tied around the third digit. Against the pitch-black wooden cup, the white appeared even paler and the red even more vivid. Slowly, Xie Lian lifted his eyes. A youth, roughly 18 or 19 years of age, stood silently behind the cloud-like red curtains. It was San Lang. Okay, here we go. We have a description of 18, 19 years of age, which, again, is just like, to me, maybe an indication of how old he was when he actually died. So just filing that away, we're in the moment now. We're not going to interrupt ourselves with brains overthinking things. It is time to just enjoy and play the soundtrack behind the red curtain, mentally. Here we go. His robes were still the same maple red, his skin still white as snow. It was the same uniquely handsome and dangerously sharp youthful face, but its contours were now slightly more defined. While he could still be called a youth, he could also be called a man. A man! Oh my God. The shyness of boyhood had evolved into a composed calm. The sheer wildness between his brows reflected his pride. The same eye that twinkled like a star was now gazing deeply, unblinkingly at Xie Lian. However, though it was as bright as a star, there was only one eye, the left eye. The other was hidden behind a black eye patch. Oh my God. Sorry, I'm a little bit distracted. Holy shit, this artist really gave him the lash work. And emphasis on the pearl, very important emphasis on the pearl. The red curtains were only open a small slit. In this position, Xie Lian was the only one who could make out the person behind the curtains, since he was blocking the view from everyone else in the hall. Not that they would dare to sneak a peek anyway. That left eye watched Xie Lian, and Xie Lian returned the gaze, subconsciously drawn to it. This time, Huachang looked not only a few years older, but he'd also grown taller. Before, when Xie Lian looked at him, he could maintain eye contact comfortably, but now he had to strain his neck to look up. Huachang, you boy failure. You made yourself too tall. You're too tall for Xie Lian. Get back into your Sanlang form. Chop, chop. I'm just joking. Though this is another point for the Sanlian agenda. No, I'm joking. We're doing the Hualien moment now. We're in the Hualien moment. Let's focus. I'm trying to focus, but I'm feeling so giggly. like hair twirling and everything. That's where my mood is at right now. Gosh, I just love scenes like this. Like outsiders watching trying to see but not quite comprehending what is going on here. To be fair, Xie Lian is not comprehending what is going on here either. But I am, and that's the important bit. Oh, this is fun. This is fun. After they had both stared for a good long while, Huachang finally broke the silence. He said in a deep voice, "Would you like to bet high or low?" It was his deep voice, pleasant to the ear, that pulled Xie Lian back to reality. As it made no difference how he bet, he answered. "High." "Fine," Huachang replied. "Then I'll roll first." Xie Lian's left hand supported the base for the black gambling cup, while his right hand covered the circular lid. Huachang stood in front of him, and with his right hand, covering Xie Lian's left, he guided him to shake lightly before lifting the lid. There were 2 dice at the bottom of the cup, a 6 and a 5. Lang Chenzhou, from where he was hanging above them, had a clear view and saw how easily he rolled such a high number. His eyes widened, and he exclaimed in awe, "How did that happen?" Huachang loosened his hands slightly and beckoned to Xie Lian. "Shake it like this. Now you try." Xie Lian mirrored his actions and shook the cup twice, but Huachang said, "Not like that." Even though he was reprimanding Xie Lian, his tone was exceptionally gentle and patient. As he explained, Huachang supported Xie Lian's hand with his own again, but this time his left hand found its way to Xie Lian's right, the one covering the lid. He instructed softly, "Like this." And just like that, the back of Xie Lian's hands were enveloped by Huachang's palms. When skin touched skin, Huachang's hands felt temperate like jade. The exquisite silver vambraces that Huachang wore were as cold as ice, and yet his movements were careful, and he never allowed them to touch Xie Lian's skin. His hands guided Xie Lian's and shook the black wooden gambling cup in a rhythm that was neither hurried nor slow. Once, twice, thrice, clack, clack, clack. There was a crisp, rattling sound of the 2 dice colliding and entangling with each other as they bounced inside the black cup. Even though the shakes were gentle, Xie Lian could feel waves of numbness traveling from the back of his hands along his arms, spreading through the rest of his body. As he shook, Xie Lian lifted his eyes to sneak a peek at the other person and realized that Huachang wasn't looking at the gambling cup at all. Instead, he was watching him intently, with the corners of his mouth curved up. Xie Lian couldn't help but return that smile, but he immediately controlled himself when he remembered the crowd of humans and ghosts watching him from above and below. He lowered his head and diligently studied the gesture that Huachang showed him. "Like this?" he asked. The smile curving Huachang's lips deepened. That's right, just like that." After Xie Lian shook the cup a few more times, full of hope, he suggested, "Why don't you take a look?" Xie Lian lifted the lid and saw 2 white dice at the base. It was 2 threes. Rolling 2 threes was already an impossible feat for him. It was like a gentle spring breeze had brushed past Xie Lian's heart, and he thought, could I have actually learned the trick? However, as shocking as the outcome was, 6 was still slightly less than 11. He cleared his throat and admitted, "I'm sorry I've lost." But Huachang replied, "Don't worry, this round doesn't count. I'm teaching you right now. Try again." At those words, Lang Chenzhou and Shi Qingxuan gawked. The crowd of ghosts in the hall also stared with their mouths agape. Then they started to grumble. "What's with Chengzu? I thought he was gonna show him who's boss, but he's actually teaching him for real? How can you not count this round? Can you even gamble like that? If this doesn't count, then when will it count?" Yeah, we know when it will count. Looks like Chengzu is really in a good mood today. That's true, though. Like, this must be like Huachang's lucky day. This is like one of the best days of his life. His unlife, his dead life for sure. Hua Chang quirked his left brow, and the croupier standing to the side immediately shushed the crowd. Everyone, please quiet down. In the blink of an eye, the hall went silent again. Although no one dared speak, their stares were more intense. Hua Chang chuckled and softly whispered words of encouragement into Xie Lian's ear. Again? It might have been because there were too many humans and ghosts packed into this gambler's den, but Xie Lian felt his face starting to heat up. It might have been because of that, however, the true reason is Xie Lian. Though I don't think you're ready for that answer, actually. Okay. Rattle, rattle. He shook twice more. This time, when he revealed the cup, it was 2 fours. See? Isn't it a little higher this time? Hua Chang asked. Although Xie Lian felt that something was off, he still nodded his head. Yes, it's a little higher. Hua Chang encouraged. You did well. Keep going. With those words of encouragement coming one after another, for some reason, giggles could be heard all around the hall. I'm there, I'm among them, I'm giggling. Judging by the voices, it appeared they all came from female ghosts. Yeah, these girls are picking up on it. I think the female ghosts are just reader inserts for the rest of us, actually. Xie Lian also couldn't figure out what exactly constituted the correct posture. At first, he simple-mindedly paid close attention to how Hua Chang positioned his hands, how he managed the pace, and how he grasped the cup, but now he was letting Hua Chang's hands lead him and shook the dice blindly. As he shook, a suspicion in his mind grew stronger and stronger. Could Sanlang be teasing me? Lang Chenchua, who had been watching from above, probably felt the same and couldn't help but speak up. You! Stop shaking the cup, he's obviously playing you. There's no such thing as correct posture. He must be cheating. Hearing that loud, boisterous voice, Xie uncovered his face again. The ghosts below shushed heartily, and a rain of dice was hurled at Lang Chenchua. They jeered at him loudly. Ignorant child, stop talking. So noisy. We're just getting to the exciting part. That Dao Zhang's rolls get higher and higher each time he follows our Chengsu's teaching. That's the undeniable truth. That's right. What do you know? Lang Chenchua was furious. You unruly, bald-faced liars! Ah! He suddenly stopped mid-sentence, and his face turned bright red. A couple of female ghosts below him had brutally yanked on his dangling belt and scolded him aloud. Xiao Didi, which I have learnt, means like younger brother, it says down here now, originally a cutie term for a very young, unrelated male child. This term has come to be used as slang for penis. Did they just call him Lil Dick? Stop causing a ruckus. If you keep on sprouting nonsense, us JEGE will pull off your pants. That is a threat, though. That is a threat. Lang Chenchua had never been threatened like this before and was so angry he was rendered speechless. You! Getting beaten to a pulp by a mob of ghosts would have been fine, but having his pants pulled off would be a dreadful embarrassment for a dignified martial god like him. Immediately, Lang Chenchua didn't dare say anything more. Oh my god, threatened into silence. But by these female ghosts, yeah, seems about right. Xie Lian looked up and saw the other god sending him eye signals with all his might. It was both hilarious and pitiful, so he could only lower his head. Xie Lian looked at Hua Chang and pleaded in a small voice. Sanlang? Hearing his tone, Hua Chang chuckled. Leave him be, let us continue. Ellipsy answer, but this ellipsy answer for some reason is filled with like such tension. This was a different kind of ellipsy answer, guys. Xie Lian gave up and once again held the cup and shook twice. As expected this time, he got 2 5s. The crowd cheered harder at this, and their teasing of Lang Chenchua grew more frenzied. Did you see that? Higher than last time! But Xie Lian had already realized that Hua Chang was just fooling around with him. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Well, as long as we're adding to the tally. He was sure that there was indeed no such thing as a correct posture. And to someone like him, any posture would be incorrect. From here on, he might as well give up on any hope of transforming his luck. Just as he was about to give up and expose himself on his last shake, Hua Chang stopped him. Wait. Xie Lian could feel the hands covering his pressing down a little harder, so he stopped moving altogether. What's wrong? Hua Chang asked, half-jokingly. I don't believe this Gaga... Finally! Volume 2's very first true Gaga, ending the drought. The drought has ended. The rain is pouring from the sky. May all the Gaga enthusiasts out there remember this day, drink your fill of Gaga after we have survived at least 4 Gaga-less chapters. Perhaps even longer. Thank you, Hua Chang. Thank you so much. I don't believe this Gaga has mentioned what will happen should he lose. Hearing him call Xie Lian Gaga, Shi Qingxuan and Lang Chenqiu both wore complicated expressions on their faces. The crowd of ghosts also felt massive shivers run down their spines, and there were even a few who were so shocked that their heads dropped to the ground. It was a little embarrassing to say, but because he was in such hurry before, Xie Lian hadn't considered his side of the bet. At first, he considered also betting 10 years of his life, but a heavenly official's lifespan was quite long, so 10 years probably wasn't worth very much. Money or treasure? He didn't have any. Spiritual power? He didn't have much left of that either. Xie Lian surprisingly couldn't think of anything he could bet with at the moment, so he could only ask advice from the owner of the gambler's den. Do you think there's anything on me that's worth betting with? Hua Chang chuckled at this question. Anything's fine. What have you got on you? Xie Lian pondered briefly, then lightly coughed and told the truth. I only have a half-eaten bun with me. Hua Chang burst out laughing. Even though he laughed, no one else dared do the same, even if they wanted to. When he finally settled down, Hua Chang nodded. That's fine, the bun will do. The moment he spoke those words, they not only shocked the crowd of ghosts, but the croupier at the gambling table as well. Since the opening of the gambler's den, there had been countless inconceivable bets made, organs, lifespans, emotions, abilities, but none were as inconceivable as the one today. A half-eaten bun. Even Lang Chenqiu couldn't contain his surprise, and he sputtered, dumbfounded. What's the meaning of this? Are you saying that I'm only worth a half-eaten bun? The crowd snickered and laughed. Someone called out, What's wrong with a bun? You're getting off easy, so shut up. Xie Lian could tell that the sparing voice belonged to Shi Qingxuan, who was hiding among a crowd of ghosts. Just as he was caught between laughing or crying, Hua Chang coaxed him to continue. Okay, this one, just as he was caught between laughing or crying, that doesn't count, right? Because it wasn't Xie Lian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It's just the same phrase but used differently, so it doesn't count, right? So Hua Chang coaxed him to continue. Come, it's the last round. Don't be nervous. I'm not nervous, Xie Lian argued. The two stayed like that, hands still touching, and shook a few times. Even though Xie Lian was truly not nervous, there was still a slight sheen of sweat on the hand sandwiched between the cup and Hua Chang's palm. Finally, the movement came to a stop. It was time for the reveal. He drew a small breath and opened the lid. The dice were 2 6s. Xie Lian let out a sigh of relief, aware of what had transpired, and he gazed up at Hua Chang. Hua Chang arched his brows. Oh, I lost. Even though he acted serious when admitting his loss, he didn't sound the least bit sincere. The crowd below was engulfed in silence. There had been people grumbling earlier. If this round doesn't count, then when will it count? Now the answer was clear. It counts when this guy wins. That level of generosity was almost insane. Even so, no one dared to comment. The croupier from before took the black wooden gambling cup and raised it up high. Congratulations to this Gongzi. You have won this round. Everyone generously gave face and cheered. Chengsu showed us a perfect loss. Beautiful. Wasn't the winner personally taught by Chengsu? He won because Chengsu taught him well. That's right. Learning the correct dice rolling posture today really opened my eyes. So much benefit gained. So much that it'd take more than 10 years to reap it all. Listening to the voices of the swarming devils from all around, Xie Lian couldn't help but smile. Seeing his mirth, Huachang also chuckled and gave the red curtains a flick. At that point, Long Chenchuo called out from above, "Since you lost, you should be letting me down." Huachang continued to stare at Xie Lian, his smile unchanging, and his gaze not moving from Xie Lian's own. He simply lifted his hand and gave an easy wave, and Long Chenchuo came crashing heavily down. Xie Lian winced at the loud crash. Xie Qingxuan couldn't risk exposing himself, so he couldn't rush forward. Instead, Xie Lian turned and bent down to check up on the god. "Are you okay?" Long Chenchuo crawled to his feet and dusted himself off. "I'm good, thank you. He probably wanted you to go up there so that he could cheat and make you lose, but thank goodness you won," Xie Lian thought. "You're completely mistaken. If he didn't go easy on me, even if the whole world turned to ash, I would still never be able to win you back." Just as he was thinking that, there was suddenly a crisp tinkling of bells, and the sound was followed by gasps of shock from all around. Xie Lian turned his head to look, and it turned out that Huachang had finally emerged from behind the red silk curtains. In his previous useful form, Huachang always sported a slightly crooked ponytail, but now his raven black locks tumbled loose over his vibrant red clothing, and an evil aura radiated from his handsome figure. Only a thin braid on the right side, tied at the end with a red coral bead, brought a hint of mischief to the mix. The vambraces were silver. The straps on his boots were silver. The belt was also silver. Even the long, slender scimitar that hung at his waist was silver, its curves smooth and peculiar. Just like that long, slender blade, the man himself was slender and tall. He was leaning against the parted curtains, with crossed arms and a faint smile. "Gaga, you've beaten me. The harvest is bountiful." Xie Lian obviously knew what had happened and said in resignation, "Please stop teasing me." Huachang quirked his brow. "I'm not. Why would I?" Down below, the crowd of ghosts were bustling with excitement, bubbling like boiling water. Each of them thrilled as they whispered among themselves, "Chengsu changed his skin again today? I'm dying. His new skin is killing me. It's so tender and firm." "What do you mean dying? Old hag, aren't you already dead?" God, such a mood, such a mood. It would seem that Huachang never showed his true form in public and also changed skins frequently. None of the ghosts in Ghost City knew what he really looked like, and they assumed that this must be another of his fake skins. Only Xie Lian knew that the one standing before him was the genuine crimson rain-sought flower of legend. Xie Lian stared at the young man in red. He wanted to say something, but countless eyes from all around were focused on them, and Huachang's attitude was incredibly ambiguous, like he knew him but also didn't. Xie Lian didn't know if Huachang could so publicly admit their acquaintance in Ghost City, didn't know if he was acting this way intentionally, so he couldn't say much other than, "Thank you." "Why thank him?" Long Chenchuo demanded. "He owns this place. He bore ill intentions from the start." Ellipsis answer from Xie Lian, who replies under his breath, "Your Highness, please stop talking and let's get out of here." If they were to stick around, he really didn't know what else would come out of Long Chenchuo's mouth. Considering the mission at hand, Xie Lian couldn't afford to stay long. He glanced at Huachang a few more times and pushed Long Chenchuo towards the exit. But as he was doing so, Huachang's voice called after him, "Hold it." Xie Lian stopped in his tracks and looked back. The chatter among the crowd started up again. Chengsu, you can't let them go like this. That guy's suspicious. Look how strong he is. He's probably not as simple as he seems. If you ask me, they need to be kept and interrogated. Exactly. Who knows if he's a spy sent from whatever organization to cause trouble on our turf. That last sentence was a dagger to the heart. They really did come from the heavens. But their intent wasn't to cause trouble, but rather to simply investigate the situation. Xie Lian wasn't sure if Hua Chang had seen the spiritual light that Long Chencho released in his moment of peril, and he wasn't 100% certain Hua Chang would let him go if he did see. Xie Lian was growing increasingly anxious, but the tone Hua Chang spoke in was laid back. Shouldn't you leave the prize behind? Xie Lian was lost. Prize? Long Chencho put himself in front of Xie Lian and questioned warily, Are you going back on your word now? But Xie Lian thought, Sun Lung would never go back on his promises. Could he mean something else? With that, he stepped out from behind Long Chencho and asked, But didn't I already win the bet? It's true that GEGE won against me just now. I heard it's bad to eat yourself, full after you've gone without for so long, but But don't forget, you lost a round before that. Xie Lian replied, But you said not to worry because it didn't count, right? Even though it took some really thick skin to say something as embarrassing as it didn't count when I lose, only when I win, Xie Lian still said it. Hua Chang replied, Of course, the rounds when you bet against me didn't count. What I'm referring to is the first round that you gambled at the long table. It was then that Xie Lian finally remembered. Hua Chang was referring to when he was testing out the lowest he could roll and ended up throwing double sixes instead. Long Chencho spat darkly. I told you he had ill intentions and wouldn't let us leave here that easily. I will not be sealed again. It sounded like he was already prepared for another fight and was eager to jump at the chance. But Xie Lian quickly pulled him back. It's fine, don't be nervous. We don't need to use our fists. On the other hand, Hua Chang tilted his head. How about it? GEGE, do you admit your loss? Willing to bet, willing to lose. Other than obediently conceding his defeat, what else could he do? And so, Xie Lian nodded. I admit it. Hua Chang extended his left hand with an open palm. Then give me the promised prize. The promised prize? After some hesitation, Xie Lian reached into his left sleeve, felt around, and fished out a half-eaten bun. Unable to look Hua Chang in the eye, he bold-facedly presented it. Did you mean this? Truth to be told, when he took out the bun, Xie Lian felt the thick skin he'd grown over his 800 years crumble a little, unable to hold up. The ghosts in the hall had long since been stricken speechless and were quietly watching this play out. Never mind that it was Chengsu's first time betting against someone, and the stakes were a half-eaten bun. Maybe Chengsu was just having a bit of fun. But to think that Chengsu had actually, in all seriousness, pursued the person to ask for this bun. Speechless. There really was nothing to say. There were even ghosts who couldn't help but spin an absurd theory. Either there was some sort of enormous secret hidden within that bun, or this person was actually Chengsu's older blood brother. Yeah, even the ghosts are writing fanfiction now. Guys, get a little bit more creative, come on. Hua Chang, however, merely grinned broadly as he received the bun, gave it a look, and waved it around in his hand. I've claimed my prize. Seeing that he actually took it, Xie Lian didn't know what to say. A good moment passed before he responded. It's cold, and maybe a little hard. Oh my fucking God. That's okay. I don't mind, Hua Chang said. Such an answer left Xie Lian unable to respond, and since he had already said all he could, he turned around and headed toward the exit. Earlier, When the ghosts at the gambler's den parted for him, it was simply because he was the first to go up, and that made him a brave warrior. Now, when they parted for him, their eyes were filled with admiration and curiosity. As Xie Lian left, he could hear the ghosts behind him ask, Chengsu, where are you headed now? Huacheng replied lazily, I am in an agreeable mood today. To Paradise Manor. At his response, the hall erupted into festive cheers. Xie Lian couldn't help taking another glance back. Huacheng had also turned around, with that half-eaten bun in his hand. He gave it a playful toss, then casually took a bite out of it. His gaze locked on Xie Lian as he did so. Xie Lian's step faltered at the side. For some reason, he suddenly felt that sticking around here a moment longer would be a very bad idea. Why is that, Xie Lian? He quickened his pace, running out and dragging Long Chencho in tow. The two left the gambler's den and ran like madmen down a long stretch of the road, almost knocking over several food stalls along the way. Just when they had finally arrived at a quiet, far-removed alley, Xie Qingquan popped up and reunited with them. Xie Qingquan fanned himself with such vigor that his hair whirled wildly in the wind. That was close. So close. My god. That was so scary. My face turned as white as those ghosts. Xie Lian's heart was racing too. Perhaps he ran too hard. You keep saying maybe and perhaps, but we all know that there are so many other reasons here at play, Xie Lian. This little baby gay. This 800-year-old baby. 800 years and you finally get to learn what having a crush feels like. Long Chencho spoke up. Yeah, Lord Windmaster, your face seems very pale right now. Xie Qingquan felt his face and smiled. Is that so? This isn't from fright, it's just what I was born with. Chencho, you're a martial god who watches over a territory, you know that, right? How could you act so rashly? We're in the middle of the ghost realm here. If you were caught and exposed, the word going out would be that heavenly officials in disguise were infiltrating the ghost realm, disrupting the peace between the three realms with their bizarre behavior. How could we explain that to the emperor? Long Chencho hung his head obediently and admitted his wrongdoing. I'm sorry, I was too rash earlier. Then he raised his head. But those gamblers were crazy. If that man had flipped the cup, whether he won or lost, the outcome would have been terrible. Either his rivals or his daughter would suffer the consequences. It was that anger that made me crush the cup. Xie Qingquan chided. Even so, you shouldn't have jumped in by yourself, right? Long Chencho blinked. Then what should I have done, Lord Windmaster? If I didn't charge in, no one else would have. His question was so genuine that Xie Qingquan didn't know how to respond. Yeah, this is the, ooh, that Long Chencho righteousness. He tapped his fan lightly against his temple. Well, Xie Lian smiled softly. Forget it. Long Chencho looked at him. Xie Lian continued. I think that even if His Highness Tai Hua was caught, he wouldn't have confessed his identity, no matter how he was interrogated. But to prevent others from picking up any clues from your words, it would be best for your highness to be prudent and avoid capture going forward. Long Chencho nodded. Okay, I understand, Xie Qingquan said. All right, let's not talk about this anymore. All right, your highness. This, your highness, made both Xie Lian and Long Chencho turn their heads at the same time, and Xie Qingquan clarified. I meant the elder. Ellipsy answer. Xie Lian rubbed his forehead a little dejectedly. Elder? All right, I am a little older, but not by that much. You're 500 years older than him, Xie Lian. Why is that when they talk about me, they always make me sound like I'm a grandpa? That's such a grandpa thing to think, though, Xie Lian. Xie Qingquan continued. Your Highness, have you two met at the Palace of Divine Might? If not, let me introduce you. This is the Crown Prince of Yong'an, Long Chencho, Martial God of the East. This is the Crown Prince of Shanle, Xie Lian, a heavenly official who collects collects great commendations from the Heavenly Emperor. That's a nice save. Even though Xie Qingxuan stumbled and didn't say the words, Xie Lian knew exactly what came after. Collects scraps. What else? Since the words were abruptly swapped in mid-sentence, there was no time to adjust the grammar, only clumsily change the course of the statement. When Long Chencho heard, however, he looked at Xie Lian and asked in amazement, "So you're that highness who ascended 3 times?" God, I love you, Long Chencho. It appeared that Long Chencho really had slept through the entire meeting at the Palace of Divine Might and didn't even remember who he was. Anyone else saying that to Xie Lian would no doubt mean it as a sarcastic comment, but because the question came from Long Chencho, Xie Lian wholeheartedly believed that this child genuinely thought ascending 3 times was just a bit curious. His eyes twinkled. "Yes, that would be me," Long Chencho responded. "Thanks so much for helping me earlier. If you hadn't..." He remembered something and hurriedly looked down and started to tuck his belt in. Tying it properly, fear still lingering. He obviously didn't think much about the history between the kingdom of Shanle and the kingdom of Yong'an. Xie Qingxuan seemed to think that introduction was good enough. He turned to Xie Lian. "Your Highness, I thought that Crimson Rainsalt Flower knew you. Why did he act as if he didn't back there?" Long Chencho finished tying his belt. "Was that really Crimson Rainsalt Flower? Was that his true form?" Xie Lian didn't have the time to open his mouth before Xie Qingxuan piped up. "How could it be his true form? Huazhang has thousands of disguises, and no one knows what his true form looks like. Last time when I was in Banyu Pass, he looked similar to his appearance today, so this must be a fake skin too. It's fake, all fake." Yet Xie Lian could still remember that night at Puchi Shrine when Huazhang had told him, "The next time we meet, I'll greet you in my true form." He thought to himself, "It's real." But of course, he didn't say that out loud. Everyone was so sure that Huazhang must be wearing a fake skin. Being the only one who knew it was Crimson Rainsalt Flower's true form was like learning an extraordinary little secret. Then he thought, Sanlang's appearance doesn't look that much different from before, only a bit older and taller. That means he was pretty much in his true form the first time he met me. Strangely, that made Xie Lian feel a little happy. Xie Qingxuan added, "Everyone says Huazhang is a strange character, and that really seems to be true. It was obvious that he was going easy on you. And yet he pretended in all seriousness not to know you. Who knows what he's up to? Could it be that he wanted us to drop our guard?" Xie Lian choked and coughed. Just as he thought, anyone could tell Huazhang was going easy on him back at the gambler's den. But rather than saying he went easy on him, they might as well just say outright that Huazhang was literally letting him win. Long Chencho was the only one who couldn't tell. He frowned. Did he go easy on him? Why? Well, Long Chencho, when a ghost and a god love each other very much. The other two patted him on the shoulder and decided, with great tacit understanding, that it was best not to explain it to him. They left Long Chencho standing there by himself to mull over why Huazhang would go easy on Xie Lian and whether it was because the two knew each other. Xie Lian and Xie Qingxuan turned and walked off. "We've been discovered now, I guess," Xie Lian said. "What's our next plan of action? Switch our disguises and try again? Personally, I don't think that will change anything. After His Highness Taiwan fought back there, Ghost City will probably strengthen their security." Xie Qingxuan replied, "To be honest, I had considered the possibility of us getting exposed, but I never thought it would happen this soon." Xie Lian sighed. I know. "What's done is done," Xie Qingxuan said. "Since our cover is blown, you might as well just walk in with confidence and do this openly." Xie Lian could vaguely guess what he had meant by openly. Sure enough, Xie Qingxuan explained, "If we want to smooth out the lie, then the only way is to have you go find Huazhang and tell him that you came here specifically to visit him. He knows that you're a heavenly official, right? If so, then it's believable to say that you brought a couple of your little friends from heaven with you. Yet unexpectedly, before Xie Lian could answer, Long Chencho cried out at the suggestion. No! Xie Qingxuan looked at him. Why not? Long Chencho replied seriously. Your Highness Shanle, do you really know Crimson Rainsel Flower? I heard your conversation earlier. It seems you two are friends. Xie Lian nodded. Then of course that plan is not feasible, Long Chencho said. Even though a ghost king is no saint, the fact that he went easy on you must mean that he sees you as a friend, and one should never deceive a friend. Xie Qingxuan could feel an oncoming headache. My God, Chencho, you stubborn mule. Yet Xie Lian laughed and nodded. That's good. What His Highness Taihua said. Long Chencho beamed. You agree with me, right? How is that right? Xie Qingxuan protested. The three of us are heavenly officials, you know. If we report back empty-handed, people will no doubt say that our success rate is even lower than the Palace of Ling Wen's. And what an utter embarrassment that would be. Xie Lian grinned, but just as he was about to speak, a terrible ruckus erupted from behind them and made the three turn their heads. Just outside of the alley, a mob of nefarious creatures ran past with raised fists shouting, Where is that brat with the bandaged face? Where is he? Seeing the other two gods' alarm, Xie Lian reassured, Don't worry, they're not after us. Just as the words left his lips, their ears were pierced by a shrill, deafening cry. And that was the end of chapter 14, which actually ends just as episode 2 ends. That was great pacing / timing of the Dongwa team as well. We did it. We survived the GEGE, and we got paid back in full. What a chapter. What a beautiful, beautiful chapter. I'm a bit stumped on what more to say. Like, I suppose we are getting a few more details regarding how exactly we are supposed to perceive Huachang in our heads. He is very young. I mean, yeah, Xie Lian's appearance is also quite young. He ascended at 17, and I can only assume that you kind of retain that kind of visual for the rest of your emotional life. So he looks quite young, even though he is an 800-year-old grandfather. Sorry, Xie Lian, it's just how it works. Like, you've adopted so many kids, and well, if your kids start adopting kids, it's official, you know. So we're really close. We're really close to a grandfather kind of vibe. But as I was saying, we're getting the impression now that Huachang is supposed to look like he is basically at the end of his teenage years. So very young, but that means he also was alive for... I don't know how old he was when he was a child. When he was caught by Xie Lian, I don't know how old he was. But by the way he talks and by the way he acts, I feel like somewhere around 9-10 years old seems about right to me. Like, being as hurt and probably starved as he is, I guess we can go a bit younger, like maybe 7-8, something like that. So between 7 and 10, depending. Like, I feel like he could have been a very small child. So let's say he was 7-8 when he was caught by Xie Lian. 3 years pass, so he would be like 11-ish when the troubles in Shanle start, I guess, when Xie Lian decides that he should descend to help. And we don't know how much time passes after that. We don't know how long the war lasts or how much time Xie Lian spends down there. And we certainly don't know yet when Huachang dies. This says Huachang's death, by the way. But it's down here somewhere. Around after first ascension, around the first banishment. Before or right after, we don't know that, yeah, we don't know. But again, because of all the imagery we're getting, it's very likely that he died in the war. Like, we have this imagery that he was a soldier, so it's very likely that he died in the war. However, the flashback that we see, the last time that we do see that Huachang actually spoke to Xie Lian in Season 2, Episode 12, he seemed to be a teenager, slightly older than the child he was. So, like, older, but not that old, right? Not that old, I think. So it's a bit hard for me to say how old he actually was and if that is a thing, like, do you keep the appearance of the day you died, or what is Hua Chang's appearance? What is his appearance about? Because what is a true form for a ghost anyway? I don't know how these mechanics work, because in the end, the mechanic could just be, well, the author wanted his form to be around Xie Lian's appearance's age, but slightly older. That could literally be it. Like, yes, he's younger, but his appearance is just slightly older, slightly, taller. A little typical romantic lead in that sense. Which is fine, I don't mind it at all, because he's Hua Chang. Honestly, I love so much about Sanlang. He could look like the most stereotypical male lead ever, and I'd still love him. Just give me enough character and enough to work with, and the appearance is honestly just, who cares? It's all about the character. The appearance is just a bonus. A little partial to Sanlang, but only because he's so fucking cute. So what do we do now? Well, I've only filmed for 3 hours, and also, as you might have noticed, I gave my Xie Lian doll arming in anticipation of the Paradise Manor arc. So maybe should we go for it? Should we see if we can hit the armory? If we can hit the armory in the next chapter, time for me to count pages again. 15, and there's the one. So 94 to 120. 26 pages? That might not be enough to take us to the armory, actually. There's a lot that needs to happen in Ghost City, but this could be paced a little bit more quicker than the JUN WU, because again, that's a rather sizable chunk of what else we need to get through. Chapter title is At Paradise Manor, Questions of Shanle. So yeah, we might not be able to make it to the arming introduction, actually. That might be the next chapter. But why not get close then? Because again, it's quite a short chapter, only 20-ish pages, 26 pages. And I've only recorded for 3 hours. We can do another chapter. Let's do it, guys. Maybe we get some more shit that we can talk about, because we're gonna go into, questions about Shanle. That's always exciting. Gold Foil Palace, eh? So let's read Chapter 15 of Heaven Official's Blessing, At Paradise Manor, Questions of Shanle. That sharp cry of desperation made Xie Lian's heart drop. He had hardly gathered his thoughts before his body was already charging in that direction. Outside the alley, there were a bunch of oddly shaped sinister creatures gathered in a circle, yelling one after another. "We caught him! Beat him to a pulp again! Fuck, however much food this little scumbag pilfered off me, I'm gonna slice the same off him, every single bit." Shi Qingxuan caught up. "Your Highness, what's going on?" Xie Lian didn't respond. He walked toward the group step by step, his pace growing in speed, and soon he broke into a run. He forcefully pushed past a couple of ghosts on the outside of the circle and saw that the one getting beaten was a boy dressed in tattered clothes. Judging by his size, he appeared to be around 15 or 16 years old, and he was curled up on the ground, trembling uncontrollably. Even though he clung tightly to his head, the layers of bandages that were messily wrapped around it were still visible. The bandages were covered in dirt, the same as his hair. Wasn't this the same bandaged boy that Xie Lian had briefly met at Mount Yujun, the boy who had run off and who couldn't be found? No wonder the Palace of Ling Wen had been saying they couldn't find any trace of him. How could Heaven's Palace of Ling Wen find him in the mortal realm if the boy had escaped to the Ghost Realm's territory? The ghosts that had been pushed aside by Xie Lian were outraged and shoved him out again, just as one of them moved to yank on the bandages on that boy's head. "This little beggar is probably a freak, even uglier than me. Look how scared he is of people pulling these things off his face." Lang Chen was furious. "What are you doing?" he cried. Then he walked up and hurled a few ghosts off to one side. Shi Qingxuan didn't have time to stop him and could only wave around with his fan. "Chen Chou, I thought we agreed not to act so impulsively." This time around, Cheng Cho had riled up even more ghosts than before. "Where the hell did you come from?" they roared as they tackled him. "I'm sorry, Lord Windmaster," Lang Cheng Cho called. "This will be the last time." Then he jumped into the fight, whacking the ghosts about. Shi Qingxuan let out an exasperated sigh. "I'm never going on a mission with you again." After that, of course, he also had to join the brawl. Annoyingly, they couldn't use any spells, lest they give off spiritual light, so they had to resort to fighting with fists and feet. A smaller part of the group that was still beating up the boy was forcibly broken up by Xie Lian. He knelt, wanting to help the boy up. "Are you all right?" Upon hearing the voice, the boy shuddered and took a peek at him from his fetal position. Now that Xie Lian could see his face, he finally noticed that the bandages wrapped around the boy's head were thoroughly drenched with blood. With patches of black and red, it was a frightening sight, an appearance more terrifying than when they had last parted. The two big eyes peeping out of the gaps between the bandages were wrapped, black irises against the white unusually clear. And yet those ink-black eyes that reflected Xie Lian's silhouette were filled with terror. Xie Lian took the boy by the arm. "Come, stand up, everything is fine now." To his surprise, the boy screamed. Shoved Xie Lian away, leapt to his feet and bolted. Since this boy had once been infected with the human face disease, he must have a connection to the kingdom of Shanda. Xie Lian's mind shivered at the mere sight of him, and he couldn't help but be a little dazed. Caught off guard by the force of the push, even his bamboo hat fell to the ground. After the initial shock, he called out, "Wait!" Just as Xie Lian was about to give chase, a few ghosts that he had pulled away earlier grabbed onto him. The boy headed down the street, which was livelier than ever. At the rate that he was effortlessly weaving through the groups of ghouls and ghosts with his small frame, he would disappear soon. It would be difficult for Roya to track down a person in this kind of setting, so in that split second of urgency, Xie Lian called out behind him. "My lords, I'll leave this matter to you. Let's separate for now. Go hide and we'll meet here again in 3 days at the latest." Roya slid out and sent those ghosts flying in the direction of the other two officials, while Xie Lian bent over slightly, picked up his bamboo hat and set off running in the direction of the boy. He squeezed through the crowd with immense difficulty, shouting all the while, "Excuse me! Excuse me!" Because the boy had spent most of his life hiding and dodging in the mortal realm, escaping was practically second nature to him. His head could be seen in 1 second, then there was a shadow the next, and after that, there was nothing more. He was getting farther and farther away. Xie Lian didn't know if it was his imagination, but he felt that the crowds on the street were getting thicker by the minute. With humans and ghosts alike pressed against each other, it made it really difficult for him to jostle through. Xie Lian's mind was in disarray, so he knocked over a number of stalls and he cried, I'm sorry, as he continued to run. Ghosts weren't to be crossed carelessly, however, and they yelled after him, "Sorry, just shit, catch him!" Xie Lian suddenly felt a chill on his back as if a hand had seized him, and he immediately knocked it back. "Who is it?" The hand was a tentacle that had come out of nowhere, and the mob of ghosts came swarming, their screeching and rough voices surrounding him. Hey, let's teach this little pretty boy a thing or two." "So you think Xie Lian's pretty?" You would be correct. Very good eyes on this ghost, very good eyes. How dare he start shit in Ghost City? A large dense crowd of nefarious creatures poured onto the street. Seeing that he was about to lose the boy in the crowd, Xie Lian did his best to throw off the tentacle that caught him. "Everyone, I'm really sorry. I don't mean any harm. Please allow me to find someone, and we can discuss reparations afterward." The horde of ghosts was relentless. "You wish!" In all the pushing and pulling, the boy had disappeared completely. Xie Lian was dazed, not quite sure what he was feeling. Was it disappointment at not being able to catch the boy, or was it relief that a nightmare had passed once more? Yeah, it's a bit like, well, he wants to find him because he has something to do with Shanla, but also he kind of doesn't want to see this boy because I'm guessing maybe the whole war and the plague and everything is a little bit traumatizing, just a little bit, tiny bit. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the ghost crowd. They immediately parted, forming a path, as if someone of importance had arrived. Xie Lian came to his senses and saw a tall, black-clad figure walking straight towards him through the path created by the mob. That person yelled, "Settle down, let him go!" The black-clad figure, like most of the ghosts on the street, wore a mask. It was a funny mask, with a face that was contorted as if it was smiling woefully. The mob muttered under their breath, "It's the waning moon officer," and they released their hold on Xie Lian at last. It seemed this black-clad figure was someone significant in Ghost City. The moment he approached Xie Lian, he bowed. "Greetings, DROUGHT. Chengsu wishes to see you." "Huh? Me?" Xie Lian pointed at himself. The waning moon officer replied, "Yes, Chengsu has been waiting for you at the Paradise Manor." All around them, the mob sucked in their breath. "Chengsu wants to see him? Did I hear that right? Paradise Manor? That's Chengsu's sanctuary. He's never had guests there." Someone who had come from a different street pointed out, "Wait a sec, isn't he the one who won against Chengsu today at the Gambler's Den? I mean, the one Chengsu educated?" All eyes were now focused on Xie Lian, each pair bigger than the next, forcing Xie Lian to raise the bamboo hat in his hand to hide from the stares. Raising the bamboo hat like you're a celebrity now, hiding from the crowds and paparazzi. Yeah, this is basically what's happening. You're becoming a big shot name / figure in Ghost City, Xie Lian. The waning moon officer beckoned. "This way, please." Xie Lian nodded and followed him. The crowd parted once more, and the waning moon officer led Xie Lian through the path. No one dared follow. And after an instant's time, the two had left a bustling street behind and made their way further into a quieter, more remote part of the city. During their walk, the two barely conversed. The waning moon officer walked as though he was going to disappear into the shadows at any moment, so Xie Lian followed closely. As his eyes swept idly past the officer's wrist, he abruptly noticed that it bore a black cursed circle. It was something he was more familiar with. A cursed shackle? His eyes widened, but he was silent in his shock. Just then, the waning moon officer spoke up. "We are here." Xie Lian looked up and realized he had been led to a lake. There were haunting will-o-wisps floating above the waters, playing around and chasing each other. Next to the lake stood a large, resplendent mansion. The heavenly realm and the ghost realm both possessed glamorous architecture. However, the glamorous of the heavens put an emphasis on prominence and prestige, whereas the glamour of Ghost City lay in bewitching frivolity. Even the large characters displaying the name of this mansion, Paradise Manor, emitted an evil aura. Strange music came from the inside, airy and soft, incredibly enchanting, as if there were many women giggling and teasing, singing and dancing languidly in play. Following the music, Xie Lian entered the mansion slowly. After raising a beaded curtain, warm perfumed air came rushing at his face. Xie Lian turned his head slightly to avoid getting engulfed in the scent. A thick snow-white rug, made from the fur of some unknown beast, covered the floors of the great hall of Paradise Manor. Surprisingly, it was a full pelt. Many beautiful and captivating women, barefoot and clad in light silk, were unfurling their light limbs like blossoming petals, sensual and beguiling as they danced to their heart's content. The music he heard came from them. The ladies were spinning seductively like bouquets of roses covered in thorns, blossoming in the deep night. When they spun over to Xie Lian, they playfully teased him with their eyes. If any travelers walking in the night were to accidentally intrude upon this scene, it was hard to say whether they'd be more frightened or enchanted. However, when Xie Lian scanned the main hall, his eyes went straight through those women to the person seated in the back. Yeah, went straight through those women, Xie Lian. Like, the list of evidence is just growing. It's pretty damning already, but it just keeps growing, Xie Lian. It just keeps growing. Your eyes went to the guy who makes your heart go. Yeah. At the end of the Great Hall, there was a large divan made of black jade, expansive in size. Upon it, over a dozen people could lounge, but there was only one man seated there, and it was Hua Chang. There was a group of gorgeous ghost women dancing before him, but he didn't spare them any looks, only lazily keeping an eye on what was before him. In front of Hua Chang was a small golden palace. Oh my gosh, here it is. I almost have PTSD from just this golden palace thing, honestly. It roughly resembled a heavenly palace, but on closer inspection, that little structure was built from thin sheets of gold foil stacked upon one another. He was also absent-mindedly twirling a piece of gold foil in his hand. Gold foil palace. Xie Lian had played this game often when he was a child. It was no different from village kids stacking rocks to build houses. When he was younger, he disliked separation by nature, and it didn't matter what it was. As long as the objects were placed together, Xie Lian would refuse to separate them. So whatever it was he built, he'd forbid anyone to touch it. And he always wished desperately that he could glue the fragile sheets together so that it would never collapse. When he was even younger, if he saw his golden palace fall apart, he'd be distressed to the point of refusing food and sleep until the king and queen coaxed him from his shell. The golden palace before him now was grand, made of hundreds of layered foil sheets, and fragile like an egg, as if a gentle breeze could blow it down. Xie Lian couldn't help but chant mentally, "Don't collapse, don't collapse." A brief moment later, however, Hua Chang gazed at his work and flashed a smile. He extended a finger and flicked the top of the golden palace. Flitter, flatter, the foil fluttered and collapsed into a heap. Gold foil was now strewn across the ground. The golden palace was destroyed, but Hua Chang appeared amused by his handiwork, like a child who'd pushed over a tower of building blocks. He mindlessly threw away the gold foil sheet that was still in his hand and jumped off the divan. I really love this. I really do love this metaphor so much. And I've talked about it at length. I don't need to go into it now. The dancing women immediately stopped in their steps and backed off to the sides, silencing their songs. Stepping on the gold foil sheets as he went, Hua Chang walked towards the entrance. "Since GEGE is here, why not come in? We haven't been apart for that long, so don't be a stranger to San Lang." At this beckoning, Xie Lian let down the beaded curtain. "Earlier in the gambler's den, it was San Lang who pretended not to recognize me." Hua Chang approached and stopped at Xie Lian's side. Lang Chencho was there too, so if I didn't put on an act, I'd be giving GEGE trouble. I should just keep this note with me, like in the fucking book now, I guess, because that was a really sloppy act, Xie Lian thought. Hua Chang probably knew that Shi Qingxuan was in the crowd too, so Xie Lian stopped worrying about hiding anything. San Lang is knowledgeable as always. Hua Chang laughed. "Of course. So, is GEGE here only to visit me?" We even got an ellipsis reply. If Xie Lian had to be honest with himself, had he known Hua Chang was here, he would have asked for leave so he could pay him a visit. Alas, that was not what had happened. Hua Chang, however, wasn't waiting for a response from Xie Lian at all and smiled. "Whether you're here to see me or not, I'm happy either way." Xie Lian was startled by those words. He hadn't had a chance to respond before the women standing on the side started giggling. Hua Chang inclined his head, and they all stopped at once, their heads bowed low. They soon filed out of the hall, leaving only the two of them in the massive chamber. "Come, have a seat here, GEGE," Hua Chang said. Xie Lian examined him as he followed, smiling. "So this is your real appearance?" Hua Chang paused slightly in his step. Maybe it was his imagination, but Hua Chang's shoulders seemed to stiffen for a flash of a second. The moment didn't last, and Hua Chang responded naturally. I did say that the next time we met, I would greet you with my real appearance. Xie Lian grinned and said earnestly, Not bad. Xie Lian's tone wasn't teasing or consoling. The words very simply said. Hua Chang gave him a small smile back, and this time it was genuinely relaxed. They took a few more steps when Xie Lian suddenly remembered something important he'd wanted to confirm with Hua Chang. He removed the silver chain from around his neck. By the way, Xie Lian said, did you leave this? Hua Chang glanced at the ring and smiled. It's for you. What is it? Xie Lian asked. Nothing important, Hua Chang replied. Just keep it for fun. Although that was what he said, Xie Lian knew that this object must be truly valuable, not something so insignificant. At least Xie Lian is perceptive enough to know these things, because Hua Chang was not ready to tell him. He was ready to give them to him. He was ready to put his fucking ashes around his neck, but not ready to confess what they are. Gosh, you're such a boy failure. Though I can't really say that anymore. He's failing, but he's actually winning. His luck is insane. Then, thank you, Sanlang. Seeing Xie Lian put the chain with the ring back around his neck, Hua Chang's eyes shimmered brightly. Xie Lian looked around him. Back at the Gambler's Den, you said you were going to Paradise Manor. I thought it was something like a brothel or the red light district, but this looks more like an entertainment hall. Hua Chang arched his brows. Gaga, what are you saying? I never go to the red light district. Xie Lian was amazed. Really? Of course, Hua Chang replied. The two approached the black jaded divan and sat down next to each other. Hua Chang continued. This is nothing but a place I remodel now and then, a residence of sorts. I hang around here when I'm free. If I'm busy, I leave it be. So it's your home, Xie Lian commented. Residence, Hua Chang corrected. Not a home. Is there a difference? Xie Lian asked. Of course, Hua Chang replied. A home has family. A place where someone lives alone is not a home. Xie Lian felt his heart stirred by this. By that definition, it had been over 800 years since he had anything that could be called home. Although Hua Chang had no trace of loneliness on his face, Xie Lian thought they were perhaps alike. Hua Chang continued. If it's home, then even a small place like Puchi Shrine is 1,000,000 times better than my Paradise Manor. Xie Lian agreed sincerely with the sentiment and smiled. I didn't realize Sanlang was this sentimental, but to compare this to my Puchi Shrine, you're really pulling my leg here. Hua Chang laughed. What's there to be embarrassed about? Truth to be told, Gaga's Puchi Shrine is small, but it's so much more comfortable than my Paradise Manor. It's more like a home. Is that so? Xie Lian said warmly. Then if you like it, in the future, come over whenever you want. The doors of Puchi Shrine will always be open for you. Hua Chang's face lit up. Since Gaga says so, then I'll gladly take you up on your offer. Don't think of me as a nuisance in the future. There's no way, Xie Lian said. By the way, Sanlang, I wanted to ask you for a favor, but I don't know if you'd have the time. What is it? Hua Chang asked. This is my territory. If you ask, I'll deliver. After some thought, Xie Lian said. Before, when I was dealing with the case at Mount Yujun, I ran into a boy who might have originated from my kingdom. Hua Chang narrowed his eye, but didn't say a word. Xie Lian continued his description. The boy was too scared and fled, and I couldn't find him for the longest time. But earlier, when I was running around the street of Ghost City, I discovered that he'd fled here. Sanlang, you are the lord of this land. Is there any way you can help me find him? The boy's face is wrapped in bandages, and he only just ran away from the front steps of Paradise Manor. Hua Chang smiled. All right, I understand. There's no need to worry, Gaga. Just wait. Xie Lian sighed a breath of relief. Truly, thank you again. This is nothing, Hua Chang said. But you let Long Chen Cho just like that. Xie Lian thought to himself. If Long Chen-cho were here, straightforward and obtuse, who knows what trouble he'd start. It's probably best that we meet up later. Xie Lian replied casually. His Highness Taiwa caused you trouble earlier at the gambler's den. Sorry about that. That slightly condescending smirk appeared on Hua Chang's face again. What are you saying? Who is he to even count as trouble? The things he broke, Xie Lian started, and Hua Chang laughed. For GEGE's sake, I'll clear his account. He can go around as he wishes, as long as he doesn't show his face in front of me. Xie Lian was amazed. You don't care if there are heavenly officials frolicking about in your territory. Could Hua Chang really be that confident? Hua Chang smiled. GEGE might not know this, but while all three realms proclaim Ghost City to be a hell of corruption, a pandemonium, in reality, everyone wants to come to carouse. So many heavenly officials pretend not to care or speak ill of this place, but behind everyone's back, they often come in disguise and conduct unspeakable business. I've seen too much. If they don't stir up trouble, then I don't care. And if they do, then even better, because then I can wipe them out all at once. It wasn't that His Highness Taiwa was trying to cause havoc on purpose. It was just that after seeing a round of that sort of bets go down, he felt he had to stop it. He acted on impulse, Xie Lian explained. That's his lack of experience, Hua Chang said impassively. Humans are all the same. When given the choice between gaining 10 extra years of life or cutting their enemies alive 10 years shorter, they pick the latter without hesitation. He then crossed his arms. That an idiot like Long Chen-cho can ascend. The heavens are truly lacking in humanity. Xie Lian rubbed his forehead, feeling a little guilty. You can't say it like that. After all, someone like me ascended 3 times. Stop thinking so loudly of yourself, Xie Lian, oh my lord. After some hesitation, Xie Lian spoke up again. Sanlang, it may be out of line for me, but I still have to say it. That gambler's den of yours is incredibly dangerous. Won't it blow up in your face one day? A place that allowed the betting of sons and daughters and people's lives, granting wishes for others' sudden death. It was dreadfully sinful. Never mind a little brawl. If one day the bets got out of hand, the heavenly realm wouldn't be able to stay on the sidelines. Hua Chang gave him a look. Your Highness, did you ask Long Chen-cho why he had to jump into that mess? Xie Lian was slightly taken aback, not quite understanding the intent of the question. I'm not understanding why you suddenly changed to Your Highness, but I'm guessing because maybe the topic of this conversation. Hua Chang continued. I bet he must have told you that if he didn't do it, no one else would. He was amazingly on the mark, obviously having seen through Long Chen-cho. That's exactly what he did, Xie Lian admitted. Then I'm the complete opposite, Hua Chang said. If I don't control a place like this, then someone else will. I'd rather that person be me. Xie Lian knew when to back down, and he nodded. I understand. It seemed, although Hua Chang was the sentimental sort, he also cared more about control and power than Xie Lian realized. Yeah, this is when I did my little Hua Chang analysis. That was basically my impression as well. Like, he cares a lot for power, but he's also the sentimental sort, and that last thing is what is his main kind of deal. The reason why Xie Lian is attracted to him in the first place, I think. Like, it's part of his, like, one of the reasons why Xie Lian feels so drawn to him. Though both the power and the riches are now a part of him as well. Hua Chang continued. Nonetheless, thank you, GEGE, for your concern. Just then, Xie Lian heard a voice from the door. Chengsu, I brought him. Xie Lian looked to the front entrance and saw the waning moon officer from before, bowing just beyond the beaded curtain. In his arms, he held none other than the ragged boy in bandages. Hua Chang didn't even turn his head. Bring him over. Thus, the waning moon officer carried the boy inside and put him gently on the ground. Xie Lian couldn't help but peek at the officer's wrist, again, to see whether there really was a cursed shackle. But he bowed and stood down swiftly after delivering the boy. Since there were more important matters at hand, Xie Lian cut in first and soothed the boy. Don't be scared, it was my fault last time, I won't do it again. The boy's eyes were wide with fear and confusion, but he stayed in place. Perhaps because he had run out of energy to escape, or perhaps because he knew he couldn't get away. He peeked at Xie Lian, then peeked at the lap table on the black jade divan. Xie Lian followed his line of sight and saw that he was eyeing a plate of luscious fruit. The boy must have been hiding for too long and had not eaten. Xie Lian turned to Hua Chang, but before he said anything, Hua Chang answered, "Go ahead, no need to ask me." It wasn't a time for politeness, so Xie Lian uttered a thanks and reached for the plate of fruit, giving it to the boy. That boy snatched the plate from Xie Lian and started stuffing fruit into his mouth. It appeared he really was desperately starving. Even when Xie Lian was at his worst, starved like a stray dog, he'd never shoved food into his face like this. "Slow down," he chided gently. After a pause, he attempted. "What's your name?" The boy mumbled as he ate, looking as he was trying to say something but couldn't do so clearly. "He may not have spoken in many years and has forgotten how," Hua Chang suggested. Indeed, it looked like this boy did not speak much, not even to Xiao Ying, and had likely been like this for a long time. Xie Lian sighed. "We can do this slowly." By then, all the fruit on the plate had been devoured like a whirlwind. Seeing that his bandages were soaked with dried blood, covered in black and red spots alike, Xie Lian made a gentle offer after a moment of thought. "There are wounds in your face, and they seem serious. Let me help take a look." At the mention of unwrapping his bandages, fear immediately engulfed the boy's eyes. However, after Xie Lian's tireless soothing and encouragement, he once more sat down obediently. Xie Lian retrieved a bottle of medicinal powder from his sleeve, moving slowly as he unraveled the mess of bandages around his head. As he had suspected, although the boy's face was a mangled mess, all the terrifying little human faces were gone, replaced by large blotches of bright red scars. The last time they met at Mount Yuzhen, there were burns covering his face, but not as much blood. This boy must have used a knife to cut away the human faces from his own since then, leaving those scars behind. Xie Lian's hands trembled softly as he rubbed the medicine in. Hua Chang caught his wrist and said, "Let me." Xie Lian shook his head and gently pulled his hand free, then said in a low voice, "No, let me do this myself." 800 years ago, in the kingdom of Shanle, many who contracted this disease found themselves with no other option and chose this route of self-mutilation. It was hell on earth. Some would miss their target and cut where they shouldn't and die from blood loss as a result. Some, although successful in removing the terrible lesions, never healed from those wounds. As Xie Lian wrapped fresh bandages around the boy's head, he realized that his features were actually quite proper. His nose straight and refined, his eyes black and clear. He should have been a handsome young man, but now he bore such a terrifying appearance. He was like many others before him. Even if he cut away the distorted human faces, his face would forever be a nightmare, never to recover. Xie Lian finished wrapping the new bandages before he asked with a shaky voice, "Are you from Shanle?" The boy turned to gaze at him with big eyes. Xie Lian repeated the question, but the boy only shook his head. Xie Lian then asked, "Then where are you from exactly?" The boy answered arduously, "Yong'an." The human face disease had only ever erupted within the kingdom of Shanle, yet this boy was from the kingdom of Yong'an. Xie Lian felt his sight go dark, and he blurted out, "Have you ever met White-Clothed Calamity?" White-Clothed Calamity, the origin of plagues. The symbol of misfortune. He was the nightmare of the previous generation of gods before Crimson Rainsword Flower was born. If not for JUN WU, who personally exterminated him, that nightmare would have probably continued even to this day. That Supreme was always dressed in snow-white funeral garb, his expansive sleeves fluttering, and he wore a cry-smiling mask on his face. The mask was called that because the right half of it was smiling and the left half was crying, half joyous, half sad. If he was seen somewhere, it meant that the place would soon be doomed to ruin, and that chaos would befall the land. This is the first proper description we're getting of white-clothed calamity, white no-face. And I'm I don't know what to do with this information, because I'm just like, I'm still feeding into my own theory here. Okay, look, like, all white, we know a few cultivators who like to wear all white. The laughing and crying mask. Bai Wuxian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I'm just saying. In the last battle before the fall of his kingdom, Xie Lian stood upon the towering city walls of Shanle's imperial capital. His face was covered in grime and tears and written with a lost and bemused expression as he gazed down at his kingdom. In his blurred vision, there stood a white silhouette among the fields of corpses just outside the city walls, his giant sleeves fluttering, his figure distinct. Xie Lian dropped his head to look down at him, and the white apparition raised his head to look at Xie Lian and waved directly at him. That cry-smiling mask was the nightmare Xie Lian couldn't chase away even after hundreds of years. Okay, so yeah, like just sign of misfortune, god of misfortune. Like there are some parallels here, and I can't tell if they are intentional here, or if it's just to throw you a bit because holy shit. Yeah, I think there's a connection here, and I'm not sure exactly what it is yet. I have some theories, but like they might be wrong. I don't know yet, okay? But whenever I get information like this, I just keep kind of thinking about these theories of mine, and it's a bit hard to look past it, I suppose. Okay, let's try and finish this chapter. The boy didn't seem to know what the white no-face was, and only watched Xie Lian with a blank expression. All of a sudden, he let out a loud cry of "Ah!" It turned out that Xie Lian had unconsciously grabbed his shoulder and gripped too hard. It wasn't until the shout that Xie Lian snapped out of it and hurriedly released his grip. "I'm sorry," Hua Cheng spoke in a low voice. "You're tired. Go rest." As soon as he said those words, two dainty girls entered the hall from a small door on the side wall and took the boy away. He frequently looked back at Xie Lian as he was being led off, and Xie Lian comforted him. "Don't worry, I'll come find you again in a bit." Hua Cheng returned to Xie Lian. "Sit down and relax, and leave him for now. If you have any questions for him, I have my ways of prying open his lips." Prying open his lips sounded rather horrifying, and Xie Lian hurriedly replied, "No, that's all right. If he couldn't say anything, then let it go. We'll take this slow." Hua Cheng sat down next to Xie Lian. "What are your plans for the boy?" Xie Lian gave the question some thought. "Keep him with me and bring him along." "He's a ghost, not a human," Hua Cheng said. "Why don't you leave him here in Ghost City? I'll have no trouble feeding another mouth." Xie Lian replied earnestly, "San Lang, truly, thank you. But when I said I would bring him along with me, it's not just for the purpose of keeping him around." Ghost City was indeed Hua Cheng's territory, and if he was willing to protect the boy, then no one could harm him, nor would he go hungry. However, the most important thing was to actually guide the boy, to help him organize his mind and speech so that he could look and behave normally. Ghost City was a bustling place, but it was chaotic and wild and unsuitable for such counseling. Xie Lian couldn't think of anyone who would have the patience to undertake this task besides himself. Okay, so you want to give the boy counseling, you want to be his therapist? Xie Lian, you need a therapist. Xie Lian replied, I'm already immensely grateful that you found him for me. I can't trouble you any more with the aftermath. Hua Chang appeared to disagree but didn't push further. He said plainly, It's really no trouble. While you're here, just let me know if you need anything, and you're free to go wherever you want. Yeah, so the sneaking around, I mean, he did say you're free to do and go wherever you want, so of course, go wherever you want, Xie Lian. Just then, Xie Lian noticed movement. The scimitar on Hua Chang's waist seemed to have gone through a sudden change. Xie Lian looked down and was instantly amazed. Turned out there was a silver eye crafted on the hilt of that scimitar. The pattern of the eye was formed by a mere few silver strokes. But although simple, it looked vivid enough to be alive. He didn't notice it at first because the eye was closed in a thin line, but just now, the eye fluttered open and revealed a crimson gem-like pupil, rattling as it spun once. Hua Chang noticed it too and said solemnly, Gaga, I need to leave for a bit. I'll be right back. Gosh, I need me an alarm system as cute as this one. An alarm? Xie Lian asked. Could Lord Windmaster and Chenshaw have shown their true selves here in Ghost City? Xie Lian rose too. I'll come with you. Hua Chang gently pushed him back down. Don't worry. It's not His Highness Tai Hua or the other one. Gaga, just sit here. There's no need for you to go. Since Hua Chang made that clear, Xie Lian couldn't keep insisting on going. Hua Chang turned and left the main hall, waving from the doorway. The beaded curtain parted automatically as he approached, and once he exited, it let itself back down, clacking as it did. Seated on the black jaded divan, Xie Lian relaxed briefly and thought about the bandaged boy. Remembering the objective of his trip, however, he rose to his feet. He passed through the small door the girls had left from and came to a small garden. The vermilion corridor cutting across the garden was empty of life. Xie Lian was still wondering which way he should go when suddenly a black shadow flashed by. That retreating silhouette, it was the waning moon officer. Xie Lian recalled the cursed shackle on the officer's wrist. It had been on his mind. He was about to call out to him when the silhouette disappeared. From the way the man moved, it seemed he was wary of being discovered. Thus, Xie Lian soundlessly followed after him. Making his way to the corner of the building behind which the officer disappeared, Xie Lian clung to the wall and stealthily gazed over. That youth moved swiftly and was constantly on the lookout around him, extremely cautious and indeed afraid to be seen. Xie Lian wondered. The waning moon officer should be one of Sunlang's subordinates, so why is he sneaking around inside Sunlang's territory? Xie Lian suspected this man could possess ill intent, so he also hid himself and followed. The waning moon officer made a number of turns through the hallways, but Xie Lian held his breath and was always within a dozen steps behind. They rounded a corner and came to a long hallway, and at the end there was a set of large, beautifully decorated doors. If he turns around now, there won't be anywhere to hide, Xie Lian thought. Unexpectedly, just as the thought crossed his mind, the waiting moon officer stopped and turned his head. Xie Lian knew he was in trouble the moment the officer paused. Hastily, Roya flew out and wrapped itself several times around the wooden beam overhead, pulling Xie Lian up to the ceiling where he clung to the beam. The waning moon officer didn't see anyone behind him and didn't think to look up, so he turned around again and continued on his way. Nonetheless, Xie Lian still didn't dare to let himself down too soon. He remained pressed against the ceiling as he inched forward silently, thinking that he resembled a gecko as he moved. Good thing the other party didn't go far and stopped before a set of doors. Xie Lian stopped too, to observe. Before the door was a statue of a woman, wily and beautiful. Of course, from Xie Lian's angle, all he could see clearly was her round head and the shallow, round, jaded plate in her hands. The waning moon officer didn't move to open the door first, but instead turned to the statue and tossed something into the jaded plate. It made a crisp, clacking sound. Dice? Xie Lian guessed. It was a sound he'd heard many times today, and not one he'd forget for a long time. Sure enough, when the masked youth removed his hand and Xie Lian looked, it was indeed 2 dice in the jaded plate, both revealing 6 red dots. The waning moon officer tucked the dice away before opening the door. It was surprisingly unlocked. And when he entered through the doors and closed them behind him, Xie Lian didn't hear any sound of locks or latches either. He waited for a moment before he fluttered down to the ground, as quietly as a piece of paper, and crossed his arms as he examined the doors. The room didn't appear to be that big, and whatever the waning moon officer was doing inside should make noise. Yet once he entered, there was not a sound from within. Xie Lian decisively raised a hand and pushed. Sure enough, when he opened the door, there was not a soul inside. From the looks of it, this was a perfectly normal, if quite luxurious little room. Everything inside was in order at a glance, and there was no possibility that there was a secret path. Xie Lian closed the door and looked thoughtfully at the female statue and at the jaded plate in her hands. It seemed that the mechanism lay in that jaded plate and the 2 dice. The room was still locked, not with a physical lock, but a magic one. A key was required to open this lock, or an authorization incantation. The dice must roll 2 sixes in that plate for one to see the real destination behind those doors. But Xie Lian rolling 2 sixes right then and there was something that would never happen. He could only gaze at the door and sigh. After he placed for a bit in front of the doors, he withdrew and returned from whence he came. After walking for a while, he stopped abruptly. Walking towards him from the other end of the path was a tall, red-clad figure, with a slender and long silver scimitar hung at his waist. It was Hua Chang. We have a few pages left in this chapter, guys. We might actually get the armory scene. Maybe? I might have timed this better than I thought. I thought we might have to wait for that. He walked over with his arms crossed. "Gaga, I've been looking for you." He looked exactly as he did when he left, the only difference being that the scimitar on his waist was out of its scabbard. It, along with the scabbard, clattered against him, clanking as he walked, painting a picture of arrogance. However, that silver eye on the hilt of ermine was closed. Xie Lian composed himself and said, "I was going to see the child, but I didn't realize your house was so big. I got lost." At first, Xie Lian was going to tell Hua Chang about what had just happened, but when the words came to his lips, they turned around and he swallowed them. The reason he had come to Go City was to investigate the missing heavenly official. Any signs of suspiciousness must not be ignored, and who knows, maybe the missing official was imprisoned in that room. It'd be best if he could find a way to go through those doors first. If the 2 matters were unrelated, Xie Lian would report to Hua Chang about his subordinates' suspicious actions. But if the 2 matters were related... Hua Chang spoke as he led Xie Lian back to the main hall. "If you want to see that boy, I can send someone to bring him to you. There's no need for you to seek him out yourself." It was probably because Xie Lian had something to hide, but the way he spoke to Hua Chang unconsciously became more docile. You finished your business so fast?" "It's finished," Hua Chang replied. "Just another gang of useless trash embarrassing themselves, that's all." The tone in which he said useless trash was very familiar, and Xie Lian guessed. Did Green Ghost Qirong come and cause trouble? Hua Chang laughed. "That's right. Didn't I tell you that many have their eyes on my place here? Qirong has wanted Go City for himself for years now, but the most he can ever do is want and burn with envy. So every so often, he'll send some even more useless underlings to cause mischief. Nothing worth mentioning. Don't worry about it. Actually, I just happen to have a place I want to show Gaga. My Gaga grant me the pleasure. Oh my gosh, we're doing it. We're doing armory scene. Also, double Gaga in one piece of dialogue. Holy shit. This is like winning the Gaga lottery, honestly. I might need 2 sticky notes for volume 2 all of a sudden. Of course, Xie Lian replied happily. Traversing the long corridor, Huacheng led Xie Lian to another lofty great hall. The doors of the hall seemed to be made of steel, with violent beasts carved upon them, horrible and terrifying. The moment Huacheng approached, the beasts parted and opened the doors. A blast of killing intent assaulted Xie Lian before he even stepped foot into the hall, and he tensed, veins popping on his hands, prepared to face anything. However, once he saw clearly what was inside the hall, he blinked. His defenses melted away in an instant, and his legs moved on their own, bringing him inside. Within the great hall, all manner of weapons were hung on all 4 walls. There were sabers, swords, spears, shields, whips, warhammers. It was an armory. Any man finding himself in an armory such as this, surrounded by all kinds of weaponry, would feel as if he were in heaven, and his blood would boil with excitement. Xie Lian was no exception. His eyes were wide and his face bright. The last time he had felt such exhilaration was in JUN WU's armory. Although his expression remained schooled, he was already so excited he was stammering. May I touch? Huacheng smiled. As Gaga likes. Oh my fucking god. Xie Lian's hands instantly flew out to feel the various weapons hung on the walls, so absorbed he couldn't tear himself away. All of these are masterpieces. This sword is splendid. A battle of 1 against many would most definitely bring out its godly powers. This one too. Wait, and that saber. Huacheng was leaning on the wall near the door, watching Xie Lian's face flush with delight. Gogo, what do you think? Xie Lian was examining each piece so intently he was reluctant to turn around. What do I think what? Do you like it? Huacheng asked. I do, Xie Lian replied. Do you like it a lot? Huacheng asked again. Very much, Xie Lian exclaimed. Huacheng seemed to have snickered, but Xie Lian didn't notice. His heart was busy racing as he unsheathed a cold and shimmering verdant blade at least 4 feet long, marveling as he did so. Has Gogo found any that he particularly fancies? Huacheng spoke up again. Xie Lian's entire face was bright and glowing, and he wasn't able to stop singing praises. Yes, all of them. Originally, I was thinking Gogo didn't have any useful weapons in hand, so if there was anything here you fancied, you could just take it for yourself, Huacheng said. But since Gogo likes them all, I'll give them all to you. Oh my fucking god. No, there's no need, Xie Lian quickly said. I have no use for weapons anyway. Really? Huacheng said. But I clearly see that Gogo loves swords. Yeah, loves swords. Sure does. He especially likes your sword. You know who I was on about. You know what I was on about. Come on. Stop being so silly. Liking them doesn't mean I have to own them, Xie Lian said. I haven't used one in years. Just looking makes me happy. Besides, I'd have nowhere to put them if you gave all of them to me. If you gave them all to me. That's easy to solve, Huacheng replied. I'll give this entire armory to you. Xie Lian took that as a joke and grinned. There's no way I could take away a room this big. No need to take it away, Huacheng said. I'll give you the property too. Just come visit when you're free. No, it's okay, Xie Lian said. An armory requires constant maintenance. I'd hate to neglect the weapons. Xie Lian placed the sword carefully back onto its holder and said nostalgically. Once upon a time, I owned an armory like this too, but it was burned down. All of these weapons are precious devices to be desired. You have to cherish them, Sanlang. That's easy too, Huacheng said. If I'm free, I can help Gogo maintain the armory. Xie Lian laughed. Well, I certainly don't have the guts to ask my lord the Ghost King to do chores for me. All of a sudden, JUN WU's warning, right before he left for this mission, echoed in Xie Lian's mind. The scimitar Ming is a cursed blade, a blade of misfortune. To forge such an evil blade would require terrifyingly cruel sacrifice and bloody determination. Do not touch it, and do not let it touch you either. If you do, the consequences will be unimaginable. Xie Lian contemplated, but still decided to ask in the end. But Sunlong, none of these weapons are a match against your scimitar Ming, right? Hua Cheng cocked his left brow. Oh? Has GEGE heard of my scimitar too? I've heard some rumors, Xie Lian replied. Hua Cheng snickered. I bet they weren't nice rumors. Did someone tell you that my scimitar was forged by an evil bloody ritual, that I sacrificed living humans? Sharp as always, Xie Lian responded. Nothing too horrible. Everyone has negative gossip said about them, but not everyone would believe it. But perhaps I might have the honor of seeing the legendary scimitar Ming. You've actually already seen it, GEGE, Hua Cheng said. He took a few steps closer to Xie Lian and said softly, Look, GEGE, this is Ming. The eye upon the scimitar that hung at his waist rattled as it swiveled in Xie Lian's direction. It might have been Xie Lian's imagination, but he thought that silver eye was subtly squinting into a crescent. And that is the end of chapter 15 of Heaven Official's Blessing. Oh my lord! It's just been pouring, guys. It's just pouring rain, oh my lord. The drought has ended. Yeah, check the end of this discussion for the tally. That was insane. We didn't get to this part. We didn't get to the part of Xie Lian getting to pet Ming, I guess. But we're so close. We're so close. It would be like the next chapter, but honestly, I don't think I can handle another chapter like this. Need a little bit of a break. I've been filming for 4 hours something now, 4.5 hours-ish. But what a chapter, oh my lord. Am I learning anything? I don't think I'm learning anything new. We're getting a little bit more of like impressions, I suppose. The fact that Xie Lian is like following the Waning Moon officer, not just to like figure out what he is doing, but he is actually, you know, trying to discern whether or not he should be tattling to Sunlong about what his subordinate is up to. I kind of like that Xie Lian is, you know, watching out for Hua Cheng in his own home. This is so cute. Oh my gosh, Xie Lian. Oh, you're too good. You're so good. But yes, we did get the armory scene, and we do get to see Xie Lian freak out about swords. And we do, like I said earlier, we do get the first description of Bai Wuxiang, like some proper a flashback. We get to hear what Xie Lian was thinking when they were losing the war, and he saw Bai Wuxiang. Which to me means that the plague and the war happened, you know, around the same time, and they are going to be very interlinked when we finally get to like discover more about the tragedy that is the fall of Shanle. Because I have no doubt that's going to be a lot. That's going to be so much. We get to hear a little bit about how the people who were infected with the plague treated the disease or tried to escape it. And it's wow. It's yeah, we're talking a lot of really grueling stuff. A lot of stuff that Xie Lian would have to witness. And maybe because he himself, you know, was immortal, he didn't have to worry about, you know, getting this disease or whatever. But it seems like it's very unusual. Like, it seems more like a curse, right? Like the little faces that would appear. And, you know, I think in the description earlier in volume 1, they would even make noises themselves. So I'm getting more, like I'm starting to anticipate getting to know more about the human face disease and all that, and getting to understand Bai Wuxiang more and what exactly this is, because he apparently, like, he is described as being the big wig before Crimson Rain sought flower, but we are not entirely convinced that he is gone. I'm thinking again that maybe he has been weakened, like considerably weakened. That was one of my first theories when I first watched the Donghua, season 1-ish. And I'm suddenly starting to feel that maybe that's where this is headed. Because Long Ying was of the kingdom of Yong'an, right? And Xie Lian confirms to us that Shanle was the kingdom where the human face disease was happening. So if Lang Ying, the bandaged kid, is from Yong'an, which was the kingdom after Shanda, maybe somehow Bai Wuxiang, after apparently JUN WU, personally exterminated him, maybe whatever remnants was left of Bai Wuxiang, because, his ashes, right? Unless JUN WU got his ashes, all of his ashes, he would not be dead. He would not be completely dead. So maybe whatever remnants of him, he managed to kind of come back, but being super weak, he attached to a ghost or a boy from Yong'an, is what I'm saying. I'm saying that maybe Lang Ying is actually kind of like a vessel for Bai Wuxiang or something. That is my big theory right now. And that is why we are getting this exposition of how Bai Wuxiang was only in Shanda, how Bai Wuxiang died, and then, the reveal that Bandaged Kid is from Yong'an, not Shanda. And also we know now that he's a ghost. So I'm thinking that we are talking a little bit, not possession exactly, but we're talking a little bit like that, a little bit parasite-ish. And I think that's gonna be like one of the reveals, because we're taking care of Lang Ying now. So once this becomes relevant, that's gonna be such a huge shock, I think. So that's my go-to right now. It could also be that Lang Ying is kind of just a weakened form of Bai Wuxiang trying to kind of blend in. Maybe Bai Wuxiang has lost his memories. Like, that could also be a thing. Like, that could be the plotline we're going through, actually. Like, this big bad calamity has ended up kind of losing that memory and is now, a weakened ghost king, but still a ghost king. And we're gonna have to, contend with that as well. Either way, no matter what's gonna happen, Xie Lian is gonna be, it's gonna have a lot of shit to think about, a lot of things to go through. The fact that Xie Lian is seeing Bai Wuxiang physically around is making me less sure about this whole, this other theory that I'm kind of championing, which is that I think Xie Lian might actually be Bai Wuxiang. But in a very, psychological mindfuckery sort of sense. That's kind of where I was going. That's kind of what I thought. But now he's watching him. So maybe that theory is wrong. Maybe he really is, another character altogether. Yeah, so I'm having a few Bai Wuxiang theories now, based on this new information that we're having. And I'm trying to think again of the way this information is being delivered and trying to go off from that. But who knows, the next time we learn more about Bai Wuxiang, maybe my theories will start changing again. Back to the Waning Moon officer, he's being very, very cautious when trying to go into this room, so I can no longer tell if he's trying to make Xie Lian follow him or not, if this is part of the plan. But we don't know, we really don't know yet how loyal he is to Hua Chang. I think we had this discussion in the Donghua videos as well. If he is a banished god, there is the possibility that Ghost City is the place that would take him in, where he could, where he got, a stable job. He's working for Crimson Rain Salt Flower, which is, gets him protection. But he could also be connected to someone in heaven still, and could actually be another sort of two-timing sort of thing. But we already have Earthmaster on that, so I'm a bit are we gonna do two characters who are kind of like that? Or is it just one of them is loyal, one of them is not? So in which case I'm placing my money on Waning Moon Officer for being the loyal one, and the Earthmaster for being the two-timer. I don't know yet. We're working on it. We're getting to understand. Ming has entered the story. Little cute little scimitar. He's so cute. He's so cute little butter knife. Yeah, honestly, I think Ming would want to be Goga's butter knife. I'm just imagining it now. Ming watching Xie Lian use any other, kitchen utensil and being I can do that. I can totally do that. I don't think they had butter knives in ancient China, but he would be like his butcher knife or whatever, like the knife he used to chop vegetables. I mean, would be like, I can do that, I can totally do that. Hua Cheng wouldn't like it. It would be like, you are not fit. You're so filthy, you're not fit to touch the food that GEGE is cooking. But you know what? I think Xie Lian would indulge it. Xie Lian would let Ming be his vegetable knife. And if they happen to have butter knives in ancient fantasy China, he would like to put some butter on that toast too. Super excited to really get into this whole ghost city sort of thing. I'm loving these like little backgrounds of like these female ghosts in Paradise Manor and also all the ghosts in the Gambler's Den and in the city streets. Because they're building up this image of Xie Lian now, and I am such a sucker for like outsiders and their perspectives. Because it's gonna be wrong. It's gonna be completely, utterly wrong. The stereotypical one that I really like is that they think they're romantically involved before the ship is actually romantically involved. But I heard some of the people on the street were already like, oh, he might be Hua Cheng's actual brother. That's why Hua Cheng calls him GEGE. This is yeah, they're about to get ghost fanfiction written about them that are in the veins of whatever poor Qing Xuan had to go through with his own brother. Is what I'm saying. This is actually insane. Yeah, Ghost City shenanigans. I'm really looking forward to this. Otherwise, a lot of this is adapted the exact same way as in. Yeah, the donghua is doing a really good job. So I have nothing to say there. In fact, I think it's time for me to end this recording for now and go into book club and let you guys know where this is headed, and then try to get this video out this week. So here are our new tallies. We ended up adding to all of our tallies this time around. The ellipse tally for volume 2 is now up to a total of 8 for Xie Lian, and the grand total is therefore up to 35. There is also one added to others, so the grand total for others, thank you Qing Xuan, is now up to 15. Laugh or Cry tally also had another addition. We are now up to a total of 9. And the GEGE tally. Guys, the GEGE tally. The GEGE tally! I knew it would be a lot. I didn't expect it to be this much a lot. So we had 5 whole GEGEs in just in the first chapter I read. But then chapter 15 came along. You wanna bet? You wanna bet how many GEGEs were in chapter 15? Well, you could just go and count it yourself. I'm not gonna let you bet. Chapter 15 had a total of 25 GEGEs all by itself. We have 30 GEGEs in volume 2 so far, already more than double of volume 1, bringing our total amount of GEGEs in Heaven Official's Blessing, true GEGEs spoken from Sandang's own mouth, up to a total of 44. Hua Cheng heard my prayers and he has blessed me. What can I say? Forever and ever, Hua Lian. This has been Amelia, aka Space Puffin, and I'll see you in the next one.